Story 1. My daughter refused to let me walk her down the aisle because a dad in a wheelchair ruins the aesthetic of the photos. She actually said that to my face. I sat there stunned while she planned her dream wedding with my money. So, I cancelled the entire wedding fund a week before the ceremony, sent her legal papers of disownment, and invoiced her $300,000 for every expense of raising her until she turned 18. The same night, she showed up at my door banging and screaming, mascara running down her face, begging for a second chance. But I gave her the same treatment. Look, I need to tell someone this before it eats me alive from the inside out. My name is Marcus, I'm 52, and 3 months ago I did something I never imagined I'd be capable of doing. Something that turned my stomach even as I was doing it. Something that still makes me wake up at 3 in the morning with my heart racing and my hands shaking. I destroyed my daughter's wedding. Deliberately. Methodically. And I'd be lying if I said I regretted it. But let me back up, because you need to understand how we got here. You need to know what kind of man I was before the accident, before the chair, before everything fell apart in ways I couldn't have predicted. I was a construction foreman for 23 years. Steel beams and concrete, early mornings and calloused hands, the smell of sawdust and the weight of responsibility. My crew trusted me. My wife Sarah trusted me. And my daughter Emma, my only child, my little girl who used to sit on my shoulders at the job site wearing my too big hard hat, she trusted me most of all. The accident happened on a Tuesday. Isn't that stupid? I remember it was Tuesday because Emma had texted me that morning asking if I could help her move some furniture that weekend. She was 24 then, living in her first apartment downtown, working at a marketing firm and dating some guy named Blake I'd met exactly twice. A support beam gave way on the 3rd floor. Not because of negligence, not because someone cut corners. Just bad luck. Metal fatigue the inspectors missed. 1 second I was walking across the platform checking measurements, the next second I was on my back 3 floors down with my spine screaming and my legs refusing to move. They told me at the hospital I'd never walk again. Incomplete spinal cord injury, they called it. Like the word incomplete was supposed to make it better. Like being half paralyzed was somehow winning the lottery compared to complete paralysis. Sarah held my hand through all of it. 6 surgeries. 8 months of physical therapy where I learned to hate every therapist who smiled too brightly while teaching me how to transfer from bed to chair. Emma visited twice a week, brought me magazines I didn't read, talked about her job and Blake and wedding plans that were still just daydreams at that point. I learned to live in the chair. What choice did I have? I learned to navigate doorways and ramps and the pitying stares of strangers. I learned that some friends disappear when you can't meet them at the bar anymore, can't play weekend softball, can't be the guy you used to be. But Sarah stayed. Emma stayed. That was what mattered. I got a desk job with a construction company, workers' compensation settlement, disability payments. We were fine financially. More than fine. Sarah and I had been careful with money our whole lives. We owned our house outright. We had investments. We had Emma's college fund that she'd never touched because she'd gotten a full scholarship. We had nearly $400,000 sitting in accounts we'd always vaguely designated as Emma's future. Retirement nest egg. Emergency fund. And yeah, wedding money, because Sarah and I both came from families where parents paid for weddings and that's just what you did. Blake proposed to Emma 14 months after my accident. She called me crying, happy, talking so fast I could barely understand her. Sarah and I took them to dinner at this Italian place Emma loved, the one where they knew her order by heart. Blake seemed nervous, kept adjusting his collar, called me sir 3 times in one sentence. I liked him fine. He worked in finance, wore expensive watches, talked about market trends I didn't fully understand. He was polite to Sarah. He made Emma laugh. That was enough for me. The wedding planning started immediately. Emma had been collecting Pinterest boards since she was 16, apparently. She had binders. Actual physical binders with magazine clippings and fabric samples and venue comparisons. Sarah and I told her we'd pay for it. Whatever she wanted. Dream wedding. Because she was our daughter and we loved her and we'd been saving for this moment for longer than Emma had been alive. The number started at 50,000. Then 75. Then 120 because she fell in love with this venue in the countryside, this restored barn with string lights and gardens and a pond that reflected the sunset just right. Then 180 because the dress she wanted was designed by someone whose name meant something to people who cared about designer names. Then 200,000 with the catering and flowers and photographer and band and all the little details that kept multiplying like some kind of expensive bacteria. I never said no. Not once. Sarah raised her eyebrows a few times but never objected out loud. This was Emma's day. We had the money. What else were we saving it for? The comment came during a planning meeting 6 months before the wedding. We were sitting in our living room, the coffee table covered in fabric swatches and seating charts. Emma had her laptop open showing us mock-ups of the ceremony space. Blake was there, quiet, nodding along, occasionally checking his phone. Emma clicked to a photo of the aisle. Long white runner, chairs with white covers and sage green bows, flower arrangements every 3 rows. She'd photoshopped herself and Blake into the image, standing at the altar. "I want you to walk me down the aisle, Mom," Emma said suddenly. The room got very quiet. Sarah's teacup paused halfway to her mouth. Blake looked up from his phone. I felt something cold settle into my chest. "What about your dad?" Sarah asked carefully. Emma didn't look at me. That was the first thing I noticed. She kept her eyes on the laptop screen, scrolling through images like she was selecting wallpaper, not discussing her father. "I've been thinking about the photos," she said. Her voice was measured, practiced. Like she'd rehearsed this. "The aesthetic is really important to me. Everything needs to flow. The venue, the colors, the way everything looks together. And I just think." She finally glanced at me. Just a flicker, then away. A wheelchair in all the AITAH photos would be really distracting. It would throw off the whole visual. Everyone would be looking at the chair instead of me. Instead of the dress, the flowers, all the things we've worked so hard on. I couldn't breathe. Literally couldn't pull air into my lungs. The words hung in the room like smoke, thick and toxic. Sarah's cup hit the saucer with a sharp clink. "Emma. I'm not saying it to be mean." Emma's voice got defensive, higher. "I'm just being practical. This is a $200,000 wedding. Every detail matters. The photographer said the compositions would be challenging with, the height difference and the chair in frame. He said he could Photoshop it out, but it would cost extra and look artificial." "You talked to the photographer about this?" My voice came out wrong. Hollow. "I had to ask about logistics. You understand, right, Dad? It's not personal. It's just about the pictures. The memories. I don't want to look back at my wedding album and have every photo from the ceremony be awkward." "Awkward?" She called me awkward. Blake shifted in his seat but said nothing. Sarah's face had gone pale, her jaw tight in that way it got when she was fighting to control her temper. "So Mom will walk you down the aisle," I said flatly. "Yes. And you'll still be there, obviously. In the front row. You'll be part of everything, just not in the photos where the chair would be noticeable. We can take family portraits after, separate from the ceremony shots." She said it like she was being generous. Like she was offering me a consolation prize. "Emma." Sarah's voice was sharp. "This is your father. And I love him. This isn't about love. It's about aesthetics." Emma closed her laptop, that decisive click that meant the conversation was over in her mind. "Blake and I have talked about it extensively. We both agree this is the best choice for the visual narrative of the day." Visual narrative. My daughter had just reduced me to a problem in her visual narrative. Blake finally spoke. "We're trying to be sensitive about it, sir. Emma's not wrong about the photography challenges. We want everyone comfortable." "Comfortable? Right. Except me." I didn't argue. What was I going to do? Beg to walk my daughter down the aisle? Plead my case like I was auditioning for the role of father? I sat there in my chair, in my own living room, and nodded. "Whatever you want, Emma," I heard myself say. "It's your day." She smiled, relieved, and launched into descriptions of the mother-daughter photos she and Sarah would take. Sarah didn't smile. She kept looking at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Pity? Anger? Disgust? Blake and Emma left an hour later. The moment the door closed, Sarah turned to me. "Marcus, you can't seriously be okay with this. What am I supposed to do?" "Stand up for yourself. Tell her this is unacceptable." I almost laughed at the word choice. Stand up. She's already made her decision. Then we unmake it. We tell her if you're not walking her down that aisle, there is no aisle. No wedding. Not one we're paying for. You want to hold the money hostage? I want our daughter to remember she has a father who loves her and who deserves basic respect. But I didn't say anything to Emma. Not that night, not the next day. I told myself I was being mature. Understanding. It was her wedding, her choice, her photos to look back on for the rest of her life. Really, I was hurt too deep to know what to say. How do you tell your child they've broken something inside you that you didn't even know could break? The planning continued. Emma texted me updates on cake flavors and band selections. She never mentioned the aisle again, and neither did I. Sarah brought it up twice more, both times when Emma wasn't around. Both times I shut the conversation down. "She's young," I said. "She's stressed. She doesn't understand." "She understands perfectly," Sarah replied. "She just doesn't care." I wanted to believe Sarah was wrong. I wanted to believe my daughter was just caught up in wedding fever, in the pressure of planning the perfect event, in the influence of Blake and his finance world aesthetic obsessions. I couldn't let myself believe the alternative. That Emma had looked at me, at the chair, at the father I'd become, and found me lacking. Found me embarrassing. Found me unworthy of standing beside her during the most important moment of her life. 3 months before the wedding, Emma asked for another 50,000. The string quartet she wanted was booked for another event, but they'd do hers if she paid their cancellation fee and doubled their rate. Also, she'd decided to add a champagne fountain and upgrade the guest bathroom trailers to luxury ones with actual plumbing and air conditioning. I transferred the money without comment. We were at 250,000 now. Not counting the rehearsal dinner, which Blake's parents were hosting. Not counting the honeymoon to Bora Bora, which Sarah and I had secretly planned to pay for as our wedding gift. 2 months before the wedding, I got a call from Emma's wedding planner. Some woman named Victoria with a breathy voice who spoke in exclamation points. She wanted to discuss ceremony logistics and accessibility needs. Emma mentioned you'll be in a wheelchair, Victoria chirped. I want to make sure you're comfortable during the event. We're planning to seat you at the end of the front row with a good sight line. The aisle is grass, which can be tricky for wheels, but we'll have groomsmen nearby in case you need assistance getting to your seat. Very thoughtful, I said. And don't worry about the receiving line or father-daughter dance. Emma said you're not doing those, so we've adjusted the timeline accordingly. I hadn't known we weren't doing a father-daughter dance. Emma hadn't mentioned that particular elimination. But of course we weren't. Why would she want photos of herself dancing with her father in a wheelchair? It would ruin the aesthetic. Emma's been so specific about her vision for this day, Victoria continued. She wants everything perfect. She showed me her Pinterest boards, and I have to say, she has impeccable taste. This is going to be the kind of wedding people remember forever. I'm sure it will be. Between you and me, Victoria's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, not every bride knows exactly what she wants, but Emma? That girl has designed every moment down to the minute. She even specified which angles the photographer should use for the ceremony shots. She's thought of everything. Yeah. She'd thought of everything. Including how to remove her father from the visual record without technically excluding him from the event. I didn't tell Sarah about the phone call. I didn't tell her about the father-daughter dance. What was the point? Sarah was already angry enough. Every time Emma called, Sarah's responses got shorter, colder. Emma either didn't notice or didn't care. 1 month before the wedding, Emma sent a group text to Sarah, myself, and Blake's parents with the final headcount and seating chart. I scrolled through it absently, noting names I recognized and plenty I didn't. At the bottom of the message, Emma had written, "Dad, we seated you at the family table near the back. Easier access to the bathroom and more space for your chair. Hope that works." The family table was 3 rows from the kitchen. Sarah's seat was at the head table with Emma, Blake, and the wedding party. I was being seated with Emma's great-aunt who had dementia and my cousin's kids who I'd met twice in my life. The exclamation point at the end of Emma's message felt like a slap. I stared at that text for 20 minutes. Then I opened my banking app and looked at the account that held Emma's wedding fund. $250,000 withdrawn over the past year. Another $75,000 still sitting there, designated for final payments, unexpected expenses, and the honeymoon surprise. My hands were shaking. Not from the injury, not from muscle weakness. From rage. I'd been making excuses for Emma for months. Stress. Pressure. Youth. Immaturity. But sitting there, looking at that seating chart, I couldn't pretend anymore. My daughter was ashamed of me. She'd looked at my wheelchair and decided I wasn't good enough to be part of her perfect day. I was an inconvenience. A problem to be managed and hidden. Not her father. Not the man who'd raised her, loved her, paid for her entire life including this absurdly expensive wedding. Just a visual obstacle to be minimized and strategically placed out of sight. Something broke inside me. Something that had been cracking for months finally shattered. I called my lawyer the next morning. His name was Richard Chen. We'd worked together on my workers' comp case, and he owed me a favor because I'd connected him with 3 other injured workers who'd needed legal help. "Richard," I said when he picked up. "I need to know the legal process for disowning an adult child." Silence on the other end. Then, "Marcus, what's going on?" I told him. Not everything. Just the highlights. The aisle. The photos. The seating chart. My voice stayed steady the entire time, which surprised me. "That's cold," Richard said when I finished. "But disownment isn't really a legal concept for adult children. They're already independent. You can't unparent them. I want her out of my will. I want documents that make it clear she inherits nothing. I want it formal and legal and irrevocable. That I can do. Disinheritance papers. I'll draft something airtight." "But Marcus, are you sure? This seems extreme. I'm paying for a wedding where I'm being hidden at the back of the room like an embarrassment." "Yeah, I'm sure. When do you need this done?" "As fast as possible." Richard was quiet for a moment. "I can have papers ready in 3 days. But you should think about this. Once you serve her with disinheritance documents, there's no taking it back. Not emotionally. Even if you reverse it legally later, she'll know you did this." "Good," I said. "I want her to know." I didn't tell Sarah what I was planning. She would have tried to talk me out of it, or worse, she would have agreed, and I needed to do this alone. I needed to own this decision completely. The papers arrived 5 days before Emma's wedding. Richard had done exactly what I asked. Formal disinheritance documents, notarized and legal, stating that Emma Grace Morrison was hereby removed from my will, my trust, and any claim to my estate. She would inherit nothing upon my death. My assets would go entirely to my wife, and upon Sarah's death, to various charities we'd discussed. There was a second document. An itemized invoice for $300,000, representing my estimated costs of raising Emma from birth to age 18. Diapers, clothing, food, medical care, school expenses, extracurriculars, birthday parties, family vacations. Richard had helped me calculate it, though we both knew it was symbolic. I couldn't actually collect that debt. The statute of limitations on parental expenses was approximately 0. But Emma didn't need to know that. The third piece of paper was simpler. A letter from me to Emma's bank, copying the wedding vendors, informing them that I was immediately freezing and reclaiming all funds in the wedding account. Effective immediately, they were to accept no charges against that account. Any pending transactions would be reversed. The money was no longer available. I sat in my home office with those papers spread across the desk. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Emma's wedding was Saturday. In 3 days, she would arrive at that barn venue expecting lights and flowers and a string quartet and 200 guests eating expensive catering. Instead, she'd find nothing. No wedding. Just an empty barn and a lot of confused vendors wondering where their final payments were. My phone was in my hand. I should call her. Warn her. Give her a chance to scramble, to maybe salvage something. I put the phone down. She'd had chances. Months of chances to treat me like her father instead of a prop she was embarrassed by. Every time she'd revised the seating chart, eliminated the father-daughter dance, discussed the problem of my wheelchair with vendors, she'd had a choice. She'd chosen her aesthetic over her father. Now I was choosing myself over her wedding. I signed the papers. I scanned them to Richard, who would file them officially. I emailed the bank letter. I sent copies to the venue, the caterer, the florist, the photographer, every single vendor listed in Emma's massive planning spreadsheet that she'd shared with me months ago. Then I sat back and waited for the eruption. It came at 8:30 that evening. My phone lit up with Emma's name. I let it ring through to voicemail. She called again immediately. Then again. Then Sarah's phone started ringing. Sarah came into my office holding her phone like it was a live grenade. Emma's hysterical. She says the vendors are canceling. She says the bank froze her wedding account. Marcus, what did you do? I stopped paying for my own humiliation. Sarah's eyes went wide. You canceled the wedding? I reclaimed my money. Emma's welcome to still have a wedding. She just needs to fund it herself. 3 days before the ceremony? She should have thought about that before seating me with the children at the back of the room. My phone buzzed with a text. Then another. Then 10 more in rapid succession. I didn't read them. I just watched the notifications pile up, each one a little burst of panic from my daughter's phone. Sarah sat down heavily in the chair across from my desk. You really did it. You actually went nuclear. She fired first. I'm just responding proportionally. Marcus. Sarah's voice was quiet. I was angry too. I wanted to shake some sense into her. But this? She's our daughter. And I'm her father. That mattered less to her than photograph aesthetics. Sarah didn't argue. She looked at my phone, still lighting up with messages and calls. She's going to come here. You know that, right? She's going to show up and lose her mind. Let her come. Blake's parents already paid for the rehearsal dinner. That's tomorrow night. What happens there? Not my problem. I'm not invited to give a speech anyway. Apparently, speeches from the wheelchair-bound father don't fit the event timeline. Sarah closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. I can't believe we're here. I can't believe our daughter became this person. Neither can I. We sat there in silence, listening to my phone buzz. Finally, Sarah stood up. I'm not answering her calls tonight. Tomorrow, maybe. But not tonight. Let her sit with what she did. She left. I stayed in my office, watching the messages accumulate. I didn't read them until later, after they'd stopped coming. After Emma had presumably exhausted herself into silence. They started rational. Dad, there's a mistake with the bank. Can you call them? Then concerned. Dad, please pick up. Something's wrong with the wedding account. Then panicked. The vendors are canceling everything. Dad, what's happening? Then desperate. Please answer. I don't understand. Why won't you answer? Not once did she apologize. Not in any of the 47 messages she sent. Not once did she seem to understand why this was happening. The next morning, Thursday, I got an email from Blake. Professional, formal, like he was writing to a business associate instead of his future father-in-law. Mr. Morrison, it began. I understand there's been a misunderstanding regarding the wedding finances. Emma is understandably upset and confused. I'm sure we can resolve this situation if we all sit down and discuss it calmly. I propose we meet this afternoon to clarify the issue and reinstate the funds. The wedding is in 48 hours. Whatever the disagreement, I'm confident we can work it out for Emma's sake. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. I deleted it without responding. Emma showed up at my house at 3 that afternoon. I watched from the window as she got out of her car, her movements jerky, frantic. She'd been crying. Her face was blotchy, her eyes red and swollen. She was wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. I'd never seen her look so undone. She didn't knock. She pounded. Open-fisted hammering that rattled the door frame. Dad. I know you're home. Open the door. I sat in my chair in the living room and didn't move. Please. I need to talk to you. There's been a mistake. Dad, please. The pounding continued. Sarah appeared in the hallway, looking uncertain. I shook my head. She hesitated, then nodded and disappeared back into the bedroom. Emma's voice got higher, more desperate. I'll fix it. Whatever I did, I'll fix it. Just tell me what's wrong. We can work this out. Still, I sat. I'd spent months swallowing my hurt for her sake. She could spend one afternoon learning what that felt like. Dad, you're ruining my life. Everything is cancelled. The venue, the food, the flowers, everything. My wedding is gone. How could you do this to me? How could I do this to her? That's what she was going with. Not how could she have done what she'd done to me. Just how could I ruin her perfect day? I'm sorry, okay? Is that what you want to hear? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I was just stressed about the wedding and I said some things wrong. But you can't destroy my entire wedding because I made one mistake. One mistake. Reducing me to a visual inconvenience was one mistake. Blake's parents are freaking out. His mother called me crying because the rehearsal dinner is tomorrow and now there might not even be a wedding to rehearse for. You're embarrassing me in front of his family. You're making me look crazy. I was making her look crazy. Not her own choices. Me. The pounding turned to banging. Open this door right now. You can't hide from me forever. We need to talk about this like adults. Then, quieter, breaking, please, Daddy. Please open the door. I need you. That almost got me. That little girl voice, the one I hadn't heard since she was 8 years old and afraid of thunderstorms. My hand actually moved toward my chair's joystick, ready to navigate to the door. But then she kept talking, and the spell broke. If you don't reinstate the funds by tomorrow, I'll never forgive you. I mean it. You'll never meet your grandchildren. You'll never be part of my life again. Is that what you want? To lose me over some stupid fight about photographs? Some stupid fight about photographs. That's what she thought this was. The entitlement in her voice, the threat, the complete absence of understanding, it hardened something in me. She banged for another 10 minutes. Then she was just crying, slumped against the door, saying please over and over like a prayer. Eventually, she left. I watched her stumble back to her car, mascara streaming down her face, her phone pressed to her ear. She sat in the driver's seat for 20 minutes before finally driving away. Sarah came out of the bedroom. Her face was pale. That was brutal. She threatened to keep my grandchildren from me. She's panicking. She's lashing out. She's showing me exactly who she is. That night, Blake called Sarah. She put it on speaker so I could hear. He was calmer than Emma, more controlled, but I could hear the anger underneath. Mrs. Morrison, I need you to help me understand what's happening. Emma is devastated. The wedding is in 36 hours and every single vendor has pulled out. The venue is threatening to sue for breach of contract. Emma's mother-in-law thinks we're scammers who were never planning to pay. This is a catastrophe. Blake, Sarah said carefully, has Emma told you what led to this? She said you and Mr. Morrison are upset about some wedding planning decisions. Something about photographs and seating arrangements. But surely that doesn't warrant canceling the entire wedding 3 days before the ceremony. It wasn't about seating arrangements, Sarah said. It was about our daughter's complete lack of respect for her father. Whatever happened, I'm sure Emma didn't mean it the way it came across. She's been under enormous stress. Planning a wedding of this scale is incredibly taxing. People say things they don't mean when they're overwhelmed. She meant it, I said. My first words in the conversation. Every word. Silence. Then Blake's voice, colder, Mr. Morrison. Sir. I've tried to stay out of this family conflict. But you need to understand the position you're putting Emma in. Her reputation is being destroyed. Her friends think she's irresponsible with money. My family thinks she's a liar. And the 200 people who were supposed to be at our wedding tomorrow are confused and angry. Then Emma should explain to them why her father withdrew funding. She doesn't understand why. She's apologized repeatedly. She's promised to fix whatever the problem is. But you won't even talk to her. You're acting like a child having a tantrum. I almost laughed. I'm acting like a child? Yes, frankly. You're destroying your daughter's wedding out of spite over hurt feelings. That's not how adults handle conflict. Adults don't tell their disabled father he's too ugly for their photographs. That shut him up for a few seconds. Then, she never said that. She said a wheelchair would ruin the aesthetic. She said everyone would be looking at the chair instead of her. She removed me from the ceremony, the father-daughter dance, and relegated me to the kids' table at the back of the reception. Those are her exact choices, Blake. Not misunderstandings. Not stress-induced mistakes. Deliberate decisions about her father's worth. Another pause. I didn't know about the seating thing. But you knew about the aisle. You were there. You agreed with her that the wheelchair was a photography challenge. I was trying to support my fiancée. At the expense of her father. Congratulations. You succeeded. Mr. Morrison, I'm asking you, as someone who loves your daughter, please reconsider. We can have a real conversation about this after the wedding. But right now, Emma needs you to be her father and help her. I've been her father for 26 years, I said. Where was my daughter when I needed her to be my daughter? I hung up. Sarah didn't object. The rehearsal dinner happened without us. Sarah and I weren't invited anyway. It was Blake's parents' event, and apparently, the guest list didn't include the disgraced bride's family. Emma sent Sarah a single text that night, I hope you're happy. You've destroyed the happiest day of my life. Sarah texted back, your father destroyed nothing. He simply stopped funding his own humiliation. You did this to yourself. Emma didn't respond. Friday morning, my doorbell rang at 7:30. I almost didn't answer, expecting Emma again. But when I checked the security camera, it was Blake's mother. I'd met her 3 times. She was a small woman with expensive jewelry and a polished smile that probably worked wonders at charity galas. She wasn't smiling now. I opened the door. She looked at me, at the chair, and something like understanding flickered across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by cold anger. Mr. Morrison. May I come in? If this is about the wedding, it's about my son's future. Please. 5 minutes. I backed up, letting her into my living room. She didn't sit. She stood with her purse clutched in front of her like a shield. I'm going to be direct, she said. You're making a terrible mistake. Emma is young and thoughtless, yes. But she loves you. This wedding means everything to her, and you're destroying it over what amounts to poor judgment and insensitivity. Poor judgment, I repeated. She should never have said what she said about your wheelchair. That was thoughtless and cruel. But you're taking your revenge by humiliating her in front of everyone she knows. That makes you just as cruel, if not more so. I'm not seeking revenge. I'm establishing boundaries. 3 days before her wedding? That's not boundaries, Mr. Morrison. That's punishment. And frankly, it's disproportionate. Emma made hurtful comments in the course of planning a stressful event. You responded by destroying that event entirely. Do you really think that's equivalent? Emma spent months pushing me out of her wedding. The aisle. The dance. The seating. The photos. Every decision she made minimized my presence because she was embarrassed by my disability. That's not a few thoughtless comments. That's a pattern of disrespect. Mrs. Blake, I realized I didn't actually know her first name, looked at me for a long moment. My husband is in a wheelchair, she said finally. Early onset Parkinson's. He's been using mobility aids for 3 years. So please don't think I don't understand how complicated disability can make family dynamics. I hadn't known that. Emma had never mentioned it. But here's what I learned, she continued. Young people are selfish. They're short-sighted. They don't understand their parents' pain until they're parents themselves. You can punish Emma for her immaturity, or you can be the bigger person and help her grow past it. Those are your choices. The bigger person, I said. Is that what your husband did when your son was embarrassed by his condition? Her face tightened. Blake was never embarrassed. Really? Never? Not once did he suggest his father sit out of photographs, or avoid certain public events, or stay home when it was more convenient? She didn't answer. Her silence was answer enough. I've been the bigger person for months, I said. I swallowed every slight, every dismissal, every time Emma treated me like a problem to be managed. I was patient. I was understanding. And she responded by seating me at the back of her reception with the children while her mother sat at the head table. So forgive me if I'm done being the bigger person. Then what do you want? An apology? Groveling? For Emma to throw herself at your feet and beg forgiveness before you'll release the funds? I want her to understand that actions have consequences. That you can't treat people like garbage and expect them to keep funding your dreams. Even if those people are your parents? Even if it's your only daughter? Especially then. Because if she'll do this to her father, what will she do to her husband when he disappoints her? What will she teach her own children about how to treat family members who aren't perfect? Mrs. Blake shook her head slowly. You're making a choice today that will define your relationship with your daughter forever. Years from now, when the anger fades, you'll have to live with the fact that you weren't there for her on the most important day of her life. Is your pride worth that? It's not pride. It's self-respect. It's punishment. And it will hurt you far more than it hurts her in the long run. She left without another word. I sat in my living room for a long time after she was gone, wondering if she was right. If I was making a mistake I couldn't undo. If 20 years from now I'd regret this moment more than any other in my life. But then I remembered Emma's face when she told me the wheelchair would ruin her aesthetic. The casual cruelty in her voice. The complete absence of love or consideration in that statement. No. I wasn't wrong. I was just late. Saturday arrived. The wedding was supposed to start at 4 in the afternoon. At 2, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I answered. Mr. Morrison? This is Victoria, Emma's wedding planner. I'm calling because, well, we have a situation. I'm aware of the situation. Emma is at the venue right now. She came anyway. She's in her dress, which she somehow managed to keep since it was already paid for. There are about 40 people here, friends who came anyway even though we sent cancellation notices. Emma's insisting we hold some kind of ceremony. But we have no food, no flowers, no music, no officiant. I don't even know if it's legal to perform a wedding without. Why are you calling me? Because Emma asked me to. She wanted me to tell you she's here. She's going through with it. And she's saving you a seat. Front row. Center. She said to tell you that specifically. You're welcome to come. If you want. I hung up without answering. Sarah came out of the bedroom. She'd been getting ready, I realized. She was wearing the dress she'd bought for the wedding, a soft blue thing with lace sleeves. Her makeup was done. Her hair was styled. You're going? I asked. She's my daughter. She asked me to walk her down the aisle. Even if there's no wedding, no guests, no reception, she's still my daughter. I'm going to be there. She hasn't apologized. No. But I'm not going for her apology. I'm going because when she looks back at this disaster, I want her to remember that her mother showed up. That someone in her family loved her enough to be there even when she didn't deserve it. So I'm the bad guy? No. Sarah's voice was gentle. You're the hurt guy. The angry guy. The guy who's entitled to his feelings and his boundaries. But I'm choosing differently. That doesn't make either of us wrong. She kissed my forehead and left. I watched her car pull out of the driveway, heading toward the barn venue where my daughter was apparently trying to hold a wedding with no wedding. I sat alone in my house for 3 hours. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't read. I just sat, thinking about choices and consequences and the moment when love stops being enough. At 7 that evening, Sarah came home. She looked exhausted. She kicked off her heels and collapsed onto the couch. How was it? I asked. Awful. Beautiful. Heartbreaking. About 40 people showed up. They sat on the lawn chairs that were already set up. Someone's phone played music from a speaker. There was no officiant, so Blake's uncle who got ordained online last year did the ceremony. Emma walked herself down the aisle. She was crying the entire time. Blake was crying. Half the guests were crying. I've never seen anything so sad in my life. Did she say anything about me? She thanked everyone for coming despite the circumstances. She apologized for the confusion. She said she'd made terrible mistakes but was grateful to be marrying the man she loved anyway. Then she looked right at the empty seat in the front row, the one Victoria saved for you, and said, I'm sorry, Dad. I understand if you can't forgive me. But I hope one day you will. I felt something twist in my chest. She said that? Word for word. Then she broke down completely and Blake had to hold her up while they finished the vows. Afterward, someone went and got takeout pizza. People ate sitting on the grass. Emma sat in her wedding dress on the ground, eating pepperoni pizza, laughing and crying at the same time. It was the saddest thing I've ever witnessed. And somehow, also the most real. Sarah looked at me. She knows she was wrong. She's just too proud or too scared to say it directly to you. But she knows. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No. It's supposed to make you think about your next move. Because this isn't over. You won. She learned her lesson. Her perfect wedding is gone. Her friends saw her humiliation. She understands now what it costs to disrespect her father. The question is, what now? Do you let this be the end of your relationship with your daughter? Or do you find a way forward? She threatened to keep my grandchildren from me. She was panicking. People say terrible things when they're desperate. And what if she meant it? Then you'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, today, you have a choice. You can let this grudge harden into something permanent, or you can be open to the possibility of repair. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Just possibility. I didn't answer. Sarah went to the bedroom. I stayed in my living room, thinking about Emma in a wedding dress on the grass, eating pizza, crying, apologizing to an empty chair. The invoice for $300,000 was still on my desk. The disinheritance papers were filed but not irreversible. I could undo this if I wanted to. The question was, did I want to? I thought about what Mrs. Blake had said. That I was punishing Emma, and punishment would hurt me more in the long run. That I'd have to live with this choice forever. But I also thought about the moment Emma told me I'd ruin her aesthetic. The casual cruelty. The complete absence of love in that assessment. The months of being treated like an inconvenience in my own daughter's wedding that I was funding. Some hurts don't heal just because time passes. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe I'd won. Maybe Emma had learned her lesson. But I was 52 years old. I'd spent 26 years loving my daughter unconditionally. Providing for her. Supporting her. And when I needed her to support me, just once, in the smallest way, by treating me like her father instead of a wheelchair, she'd failed. I wasn't ready to forgive that yet. Maybe not ever. It's been 3 months since the wedding that wasn't. Emma has texted me twice. Both times, short messages. Can we talk? I haven't responded. She and Blake are married. Sarah says they're living in a small apartment because they couldn't afford the house they'd planned to buy. Blake's parents loaned them money. Emma's working extra hours to help pay it back. Sarah visits her once a week. She doesn't tell me about it unless I ask, and I usually don't ask. The disinheritance papers are still active. The $300,000 invoice sits in a drawer in my desk. I know I can't actually collect it. Richard told me as much. But I keep it anyway, a reminder of the cost of raising a daughter who grew up to be ashamed of her father. People tell me I should let it go. That Emma was young and stupid, that she'll mature, that family is worth forgiving. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm being stubborn and cruel and allowing pride to destroy something precious. But when I close my eyes, I still see Emma's face when she told me about the photographs. I still hear her voice explaining that the wheelchair would be distracting, that the aesthetic mattered more than her father's dignity. And I think, I loved you enough to give you everything. You couldn't love me enough to let me walk you down an aisle. Maybe that makes me a bad father. Maybe it makes me petty and vindictive and unforgiving. But it also makes me human. Just a man in a wheelchair who wanted his daughter to love him more than she loved perfect photographs. I'm not sure I'll ever forgive her. I'm not sure I want to. And I guess that's something I'll have to live with. We both will. The hardest part isn't the anger. Anger is clean, simple, something you can hold on to and understand. The hardest part is the moments when the anger cracks and something else seeps through. Like 2 weeks after the wedding, when I was at the grocery store and saw a father with his daughter in the checkout line. She couldn't have been more than 5, standing on her tiptoes to put items on the conveyor belt while he watched her with this expression of complete adoration. She knocked over a jar of pickles and it shattered everywhere, and instead of getting angry, he just laughed and picked her up and said, "That's okay, sweetheart. Accidents happen." I had to leave my cart right there in the aisle and go sit in my van for 20 minutes until I could breathe again. Or like last month, when I was going through old photos looking for something unrelated and found Emma's kindergarten graduation pictures. She was wearing this tiny cap and gown, missing her 2 front teeth, holding a construction paper diploma. I'd taken the day off work to be there. In one photo, she's sitting on my shoulders, both of us grinning at the camera like we'd won the lottery. I closed that album and haven't opened it since. Sarah says I'm punishing myself as much as I'm punishing Emma. She's probably right. Sarah's usually right about these things, which is why I've been married to her for 28 years. She came home yesterday with news she'd been holding back for 3 days. I could tell something was brewing by the way she kept starting sentences and then stopping, the way she rearranged the kitchen counter items that didn't need rearranging. Finally, over dinner, chicken and rice, nothing special, she just said it. Emma's pregnant. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. I set it down carefully, like it might shatter if I moved too fast. How far along? 8 weeks. She told me this weekend. She's scared, Marcus. She wanted me to tell you because she doesn't know how to. Congratulations to her and Blake. Sarah's jaw tightened. Don't do that. Don't pretend you don't care. What do you want me to say? I want you to feel something other than this cold anger you've wrapped yourself in. That's your grandchild. Your first grandchild. I pushed my plate away. My appetite had disappeared somewhere between Emma's and pregnant. She told me I'd never meet my grandchildren. She said that to my face. Those were her exact words. She was panicking and desperate and said something cruel. People do that. People also mean what they say when they're desperate. That's when the truth comes out. Sarah stood up, her chair scraping loud against the floor. You know what I think? I think you're terrified. I think you're scared that if you let yourself care about this baby, Emma will use it against you. That she'll dangle your grandchild like a carrot and make you grovel for access. So you're protecting yourself by pretending you don't care at all. That's not. It is. And I understand it. But Marcus, that baby didn't do anything to you. That child is innocent in all of this. And if you let your anger at Emma cost you a relationship with your grandchild, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. She left the room. I sat at the table alone, staring at my half-eaten dinner, thinking about a baby I'd never met who was already caught in the crossfire of something they had no part in creating. The thing is, I'd imagined being a grandfather. Back before the accident, before the chair, before everything went sideways, Sarah and I used to talk about it. We'd joke about spoiling grandkids and teaching them things their parents wouldn't approve of and having this whole new chapter of our lives to look forward to. I'd pictured teaching a grandson how to hammer a nail straight. Taking a granddaughter to construction sites and letting her wear my old hard hat. Being the fun grandpa who snuck extra cookies and stayed up past bedtime telling stories. I hadn't pictured being the estranged grandfather who never got invited to birthday parties because his daughter couldn't forgive him for ruining her wedding. That night, I dreamed about Emma. Not Emma now, the 26-year-old who called me an aesthetic problem. Emma at 7, coming home from school crying because some kid had made fun of her glasses. I'd held her and told her she was beautiful and perfect and anyone who couldn't see that was an idiot. In the dream, she looked up at me and said, "But what if I'm the idiot, Daddy? What if I'm the one who can't see?" I woke up at 4 in the morning with my heart racing and couldn't get back to sleep. Here's what nobody tells you about revenge: it doesn't feel the way you think it will. You imagine this moment of triumph, of justice served, of the person who hurt you finally understanding what they did. You imagine feeling vindicated. I don't feel vindicated. I feel hollow. Emma's wedding was 3 months ago and I still replay it constantly. Not the wedding itself, I wasn't there, but the moments leading up to it. Every conversation, every decision point where I could have chosen differently. I could have called her. Could have sat her down and explained, calmly and clearly, how much her words had hurt me. Could have given her a chance to apologize before I pulled the trigger on the nuclear option. I could have responded to her texts, answered her calls, opened the door when she pounded on it crying. Could have been the bigger person, like Mrs. Blake suggested. I could have gone to that disaster of a wedding, sat in the front row chair they saved for me, and watched my daughter marry the man she loved despite everything falling apart around her. I could have been her father instead of her judge. But I didn't do any of those things. And now here we are. Emma's pregnant with a child I may never meet, Sarah's caught in the middle trying to maintain relationships with both of us, and I'm sitting in my house at night wondering if I've made the biggest mistake of my life. Richard, my lawyer, called me last week. He'd heard through mutual acquaintances about the wedding situation, small town, people talk, and wanted to check in. Those disinheritance papers, he said. They're still active. You know you can reverse them anytime, right? Just say the word and I'll file the reversal. I know. Marcus, I'm your lawyer, not your therapist. But I've seen a lot of family disputes in my career. The ones where people dig in their heels and refuse to budge? They rarely end well. For anyone. She hasn't apologized. Have you asked her to? That stopped me. Had I? I'd frozen her out completely. Ignored her calls, her texts, refused to see her. How was she supposed to apologize if I wouldn't give her the opportunity? I'm not saying you weren't justified in what you did, Richard continued. She was cruel and thoughtless. But justified and wise are two different things. You can be right and still lose everything that matters. After we hung up, I sat with that for a long time. You can be right and still lose everything that matters. Was I willing to sacrifice my relationship with my daughter, my future grandchild, my wife's happiness, all to prove a point? To teach Emma a lesson she'd probably already learned the hard way? I don't know. I still don't know. What I do know is this: I wake up every morning and the first thing I think about is Emma. I go through my day and random things trigger memories, a song on the radio, a commercial about weddings, a kid in a wheelchair at the mall. I go to bed at night and she's still there, this constant ache in my chest that won't go away no matter how justified my anger is. Sarah says time heals everything. I'm not sure I believe her. Some wounds are too deep, too deliberate. Some things, once said, can't be unsaid. But then I think about that baby. That innocent child who'll be born in about 7 months. My grandchild. Blood of my blood. And I wonder if maybe, just maybe, there's a difference between forgiving someone and finding a way to move forward anyway. Not for Emma's sake. Not even for mine. But for that baby who deserves a grandfather, even a stubborn, wounded, complicated one in a wheelchair. I haven't made any decisions yet. The disinheritance papers are still filed. Emma and I still haven't spoken. The distance between us feels insurmountable some days. But yesterday I did something I haven't done in 3 months. I texted her back. Just 2 words, "Congratulations, Emma." She responded within minutes. "Can we please talk? Please, Dad. I need to explain. I need to tell you everything I should have said months ago. I haven't answered yet. I'm not sure what I'll say when I do. I'm not ready to hear her apologies, and I'm definitely not ready to offer forgiveness. The wound is still too fresh, still too raw. But I'm also not ready to lose her forever. To never meet my grandchild. To let this anger define the rest of my life. So maybe there's a middle ground somewhere. A place where I can acknowledge the hurt while still leaving the door open. Where Emma can understand the consequences of her actions while still having a father who loves her, even when he doesn't like her very much. Or maybe I'm fooling myself. Maybe some breaks are permanent. Maybe Emma and I will never recover what we had before she told me I'd ruin her aesthetic. Time will tell, I guess. Time and whatever words I manage to type into my phone when I finally work up the courage to text my daughter back. For now, I'm just sitting here in my chair, in my living room, staring at her message on my phone screen. Please, Dad. 2 words that carry the weight of everything we've lost and everything we might still save. I wish I knew what the right answer was. I wish there was a clear path forward, a way to be both strong and merciful, both hurt and healing. But life doesn't work that way. And neither does being a parent. You just do your best with impossible choices and hope it's enough. So I guess we'll see what happens next. Emma and me. Father and daughter. 2 people who love each other and hurt each other and have no idea how to fix what's broken between them. That's the real story. Not the revenge, not the cancelled wedding, not the dramatic confrontation. Just this. 2 people sitting on opposite sides of a chasm, wondering if there's still a bridge left to cross. I still don't know if I'll ever truly forgive her. But maybe, just maybe, I'm willing to try to find out. Story 2. My high school bully tormented me for years, spreading vicious lies about me, giving me swirlies, and ruining every relationship I had. He almost made me end my life before my mom saved me. Now, 15 years later, he randomly popped up on LinkedIn asking me to put in a good word for him at my company because of our past friendship. I stared at the message in disbelief. So, I put in the perfect word for him. Instead of getting a call about his job acceptance, he got a call explaining exactly why he'd never work in our industry again. I need to tell someone this before it eats me alive from the inside out. The LinkedIn notification pinged at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was half asleep, scrolling through my phone. My wife was already asleep beside me. Everything was peaceful. Normal. Safe. Then I saw the name. Derek Hastings. 15 years since I'd seen that name attached to anything in my life, and there it was, glowing on my screen like a curse I thought I'd escaped. My chest went tight. My hands started shaking before I even opened the message. The message was 3 paragraphs long. Hey man. Long time no see. I was scrolling through LinkedIn and saw you're working at Barrington Tech now as Senior Director of Engineering. That's amazing, dude. Really happy for you. I always knew you'd do something big with those brains of yours. Listen, I'm actually in the job market right now and I saw Barrington has an opening for solutions architect. I've got 10 years of experience in the field and I think I'd be a perfect fit. Would you be willing to put in a good word for me? For old time's sake? We go way back, and I think it would really help my application stand out. Let me know. Would love to catch up either way. Hope life's treating you well. For old time's sake. We go way back. I read it 5 times. My hands were shaking so badly I had to set the phone down. The room felt too small. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, blood pumping too fast through vessels that remembered what Derek Hastings had done to them. At 11:49 p.m. on that Tuesday, I was 16 again. Sophomore year. October 23rd. 3 days before my 16th birthday. The bathroom on the 2nd floor near the science labs. Derek had cornered me at my locker, smiled that friendly smile he used when adults were watching, and said he needed to talk to me. I followed him. Stupid. His friends Tyler and Josh were already there, positioned at the door. Derek had me by the collar before I realized my mistake, dragging me toward the furthest stall. Wait, I said. Derek, wait. Shut up. He shoved me down. I fought that first time, before I learned fighting made it last longer. Didn't matter. He was bigger, stronger. My face went toward the water and I thought about movies where drowning looks peaceful. It's not peaceful. The water was cold. It filled my nose, my mouth, invaded every space. I couldn't breathe. My lungs burned like fire. He flushed once. Twice. 3 times. I could hear his friends laughing through the roaring in my ears. When he finally let me up, I gasped and coughed and threw up right there on the bathroom floor. That's disgusting, Derek said. Clean yourself up, freak. They left me there. On my knees, soaking wet, covered in vomit, trying to figure out how to face the rest of the day. I stayed for 20 minutes. Missed physics. Finally cleaned up with paper towels that dissolved in water. Went to the nurse, said I was sick, went home. Took the longest shower of my life, trying to wash away the feeling of his hand on my head. The taste of toilet water. The sound of them laughing. It didn't wash away. That was the first swirly. There were 14 more over the next 2 years. I counted everything back then. 15 swirlies. 27 times he knocked books from my hands. 38 rumors. I kept a list in a notebook under my mattress. My mom found it once and cried for an hour. The rumors were worse than physical pain. Physical pain fades. But lies that spread through a small high school? Those burrow under your skin. Derek told everyone I cheated on tests. After I got a perfect score on our chemistry midterm, he told Mr. Palmer I'd written notes on my hand. Got 3 friends to back him up. I had to retake the test supervised, got a 96 because I was so anxious. That 96 became proof I'd cheated the first time. He told people I followed girls into bathrooms. Jessica Turnbull confronted me in the hallway, said her boyfriend would kick my teeth in if I came near them again. Called me a pervert. Girls started avoiding me completely. He spread rumors my family was on welfare. Kids made comments about my lunch, my shoes, my backpack. Everything became evidence of poverty I didn't have. The worst was the shrine rumor. Derek told people I had pictures of Ms. Henderson, our English teacher, in my locker. They searched it. Found nothing, obviously. But everyone remembered the accusation, not the exoneration. Ms. Henderson stopped being nice to me after that, distant, professional, protecting herself. Derek was captain of the lacrosse team. Charming. Volunteered at animal shelters. Teachers loved him. I was the quiet kid who liked computers and chess club. Who do you think people believed? By junior year, I had no friends left. Jason Webb, my friend from middle school, stopped acknowledging me by sophomore year. I ran into him at GameStop once and he looked uncomfortable, made an excuse, left. That hurt worse than Derek's active cruelty, at least Derek's hatred was honest. Then Sarah Martinez asked me to homecoming. Sarah, who I'd had a crush on since 8th grade. She approached me after chemistry, nervous, and asked if I wanted to go. I thought it was a joke at first. Looked for cameras. But she seemed sincere. Yeah, I said. Yes. I'd love to go. Her smile was genuine. For the first time in over a year, something good was happening. I should have known better. Derek started telling people I'd been bragging in the locker room about what I was going to do with Sarah after the dance. Explicit, disgusting things I would never say. By Wednesday, 3 people had told her. By Friday, 6 people had. She confronted me in the cafeteria. Is it true? Her voice was shaking. Did you really say those things about me? No. Sarah, no, I never. Then why did 6 different people tell me the exact same story? Because Derek made it up. He's lying. He's been lying about me all year. She slapped me. The sound cut through every conversation. Everyone went silent. Stay away from me, she said. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. You're disgusting. I stopped going to the cafeteria after that. Started eating in my car where nobody could see me. He didn't forget. He didn't forget. Senior year, Derek and his friends started following me to my car, cornering me in hallways. Nothing that left marks. Just enough to remind me I was nothing. Shoves into lockers. Books knocked from hands. Whispered threats. Kill yourself already. That became a casual greeting by January. Multiple people said it, always when no adults were around. I started having nightmares. Would wake up gasping, drowning in my dreams. My grades slipped from straight A's to barely B's. I couldn't concentrate, couldn't focus on anything except making myself small enough to disappear. February, someone left a Valentine's card in my locker. Inside, written in Sharpie, nobody will ever love you. You should die alone. Something inside me broke. Not the card itself, the accumulation. 2.5 years of this with 4 months still to go. And then what? College? Derek's friends were going to the same state university I'd planned to attend. I started researching methods. Made a plan. Chose a date. March 15th. The Ides of March. I wrote notes. To my mom, apologizing. To my dad. To Jason, saying I didn't blame him. To Sarah, apologizing for things I never did. To my teachers. I wrote one to Derek too, never sent. You won. I hope knowing that makes you happy. I put all the notes in envelopes in my desk drawer. 18 more days. I just had to make it to March 15th. Then it would be over. My mom found the notes on March 12th, 3 days before. I came home Friday afternoon. Her car was in the driveway, unusual for a Friday. I walked into my room and she was sitting on my bed. The desk drawer was open. All 9 envelopes spread on my comforter. She'd been crying. Baby, she said. Her voice cracked. Baby, please talk to me. I couldn't talk. My throat closed up. I just stood there, feeling exposed in a way worse than any swirly, any rumor, any public humiliation. She crossed the room and pulled me into her arms. Held me so tight I could barely breathe. I didn't know, she said into my shoulder. Why didn't you tell me? I started crying. The ugly kind. Sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe, couldn't talk, could only hold on to my mom and let years of pain out all at once. When I could finally breathe, she said, tell me everything. So I did. About Derek. About the swirlies, the rumors, eating lunch in my car, the nightmares, the Valentine's card. All of it. She cried while I talked. When I finished, she said, you're not going back to that school. Not Monday. Not ever. She made calls. By Monday, I was enrolled in online school. She'd taken leave from work. We spent 3 months together. She'd work at the dining table while I did coursework in the living room. We ate lunch together. Watched movies. Talked. She found me a therapist. Dr. Sarah Chen. Twice a week at first. Dr. Chen was the first person besides my mom who made me feel like what happened wasn't my fault. We worked through everything over months, years. She taught me coping mechanisms, how to recognize negative thought patterns. It took a long time. Not weeks. Years. But slowly, I started feeling like a person again. My mom saved my life. If she hadn't found those notes, I wouldn't be here. I never saw Derek again. Didn't go to graduation. Left for college 3 states away. Built myself from scratch where nobody knew the scared kid who counted humiliations. For 15 years, I thought I'd moved on. But memory doesn't stay buried. At 11:52 p.m. that Tuesday, staring at Derek's message, something shifted inside me. Something cold and clear. He didn't remember. Or he'd rewritten history so thoroughly he believed we'd been friends. I didn't respond that night. But by the next evening, I'd made a decision. I was going to help Derek. I was going to put in the perfect word for him. I opened my laptop and pulled up his profile. He'd worked at 3 companies over 10 years, Morrison Solutions, Carver, and Associates, TechFlow Industries. I started making calls. Rachel Kim at Morrison Solutions told me Derek had been let go for multiple HR complaints. Harassment of female colleagues. 3 investigations. We gave him severance and an NDA rather than fight wrongful termination. I'd never recommend him anywhere. James Bradford at TechFlow confirmed a similar pattern. Comments crossed the line, then escalated. We let him resign rather than terminate. He's manipulative, plays the victim. Michelle Torres at Carver and Associates, 7 complaints in 3 years. We put him on a performance improvement plan and he quit. Flagged in our system as non-rehirable. Lauren Price, who does background checks, found more, a lawsuit naming him, an employment gap hiding a 2-month termination, references that were all personal friends. 5 different sources. Multiple companies. Consistent pattern spanning a decade. Derek hadn't changed. He'd moved his cruelty from hallways to offices. On Thursday, I responded to his LinkedIn message. Hey Derek, great to hear from you. I'd be happy to help. Can you send me your resume and I'll forward it to the right people? Looking forward to catching up. He responded within an hour. The resume was attached. Professional. Polished. Full of achievements that probably sounded impressive if you didn't know the real story behind them. I forwarded the resume to our head of HR, Janet Morales, with a detailed cover note. Janet and I had worked together for 6 years. She trusted my judgment. I trusted hers. We'd built Barrington Tech's culture together, the zero-tolerance harassment policy, the transparent reporting systems, the emphasis on psychological safety. Everything Derek's presence would undermine. The email took me 3 hours to write. I wanted it to be thorough but not vindictive. Professional but clear about the stakes. Every word mattered. Janet, I received this application from Derek Hastings, someone I knew in high school. I need to disclose some serious concerns before his application proceeds any further in our hiring process. Over the past several days, I've conducted informal reference checking through my professional network. I've spoken with multiple sources at 3 of his previous employers, TechFlow Industries, Carver, and Associates, and Morrison Solutions. What I discovered is a consistent pattern of behavior that poses significant risk to our company and our employees. Multiple credible professional contacts have reported in general terms, documented pattern of HR complaints across 3 companies. Multiple investigations for creating hostile work environments, consistent allegations of harassment targeting female colleagues, pattern of inappropriate comments and behavior that escalated over time, departures from companies related to these behavioral issues, professional consensus that he presents a significant liability risk. I'm attaching my summary notes from these professional conversations. My sources were careful to share only general assessments rather than confidential internal documentation, but the consistency of the pattern across multiple companies and sources is deeply concerning. I've also had a background verification specialist review his employment history, which revealed additional red flags including an unexplained employment gap and reference checks that rely exclusively on personal contacts rather than direct supervisors or colleagues. Given our company's zero-tolerance policy on harassment and the significant emphasis we place on cultural fit and workplace safety, I strongly recommend we do not move forward with this candidate. The pattern of behavior is too consistent, too well documented across multiple professional sources, and too recent to ignore. I also want to be transparent about my personal connection to this candidate. Derek and I attended the same high school, and he was responsible for severe bullying that contributed to serious mental health issues during my adolescence. I've disclosed this because I want you to have complete context for my concerns. However, my recommendation against hiring him is based entirely on his documented professional conduct and the consistent feedback from multiple independent sources, not on our history. I'm available to discuss this further if you need additional information. Please let me know if there's anything else I can provide to support your decision. Best name. I read it 5 times before sending it. Checked every word for anything that could be construed as personal vendetta rather than legitimate professional concern. The line about our high school history was calculated, full transparency, but framed in a way that made it clear this wasn't about old grudges. It was about protecting the company and our employees from someone with a documented pattern of harmful behavior. Janet responded 90 minutes later. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. This is exactly the kind of due diligence we need from our leadership team. I've reviewed your summary and the consistent pattern across multiple professional sources is deeply concerning. The fact that this information comes from independent contacts at different companies makes it highly credible. We will not be moving forward with this candidate under any circumstances. I'm adding detailed notes to our internal system so if he applies again in the future, under his own name or potentially through a recruiter who might not know his history, we have documentation. I'm also going to share this information with our executive team. We've been discussing ways to improve our screening processes, and this is a clear example of why thorough reference checking and network-based due diligence are essential. Thank you for handling this with such professionalism and transparency. I know this must have been difficult given your personal history with this individual. If you need any support processing this, please let me know. Janet. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. It was done. Derek wouldn't get the job at Barrington Tech. He'd never work in an environment where I had any influence or responsibility. The people I'd hired, the team I'd built, the culture we'd created, they were all protected from him. But it still didn't feel like enough. A generic rejection email in a few weeks? Derek moving on to the next company, the next opportunity, the next set of victims? That wasn't justice. That was just administrative cleanup. That was me protecting my own small corner of the industry while leaving everyone else vulnerable. I thought about the women at TechFlow, at Carver and Associates, at Morrison Solutions. The ones who'd filed complaints and been told to give Derek another chance. The ones who'd been asked to continue working with someone who made them feel unsafe because his performance metrics were good. The ones who'd eventually left their jobs rather than keep fighting a system that protected predators over victims. I thought about Sarah Martinez, her face red with tears as she slapped me in the cafeteria. How many women had Derek hurt since then? How many more would he hurt if I did nothing beyond protecting my own company? That 16-year-old version of me, the one who wrote notes and made plans to disappear, would have been satisfied with Derek not getting one job. Would have felt vindicated by this small victory. But I wasn't 16 anymore. I had resources now. Connections. Professional capital I'd spent a decade building. And I had information that other people needed to know. The question was whether using that information crossed a line from protection to revenge. Whether spreading word about Derek through my network was justified or vindictive. Whether I had the right to effectively end his career in this industry. I thought about it for 2 days. Ran through scenarios, considered consequences, examined my own motivations with the same scrutiny my therapist had taught me. Was I doing this to protect future victims? Or was I doing this because it felt good to finally have power over someone who'd once had complete power over me? The answer was both. And maybe that was okay. So I made one more call. This one to Marcus Chen, not Marcus Chen from my high school, but Marcus Chen who I'd worked with at my first job out of college. We'd been junior developers together, stayed friends over the years as we both climbed the corporate ladder. He was now director of talent acquisition at Preston Dynamics, one of the biggest tech companies in the industry. More importantly, he was a core member of an informal network of tech industry professionals who shared information about problem employees to protect their companies and colleagues. The network wasn't official. Couldn't be, because that would open up liability issues. But it existed. HR directors and talent acquisition specialists who trusted each other, who'd worked together long enough to know they were operating from the same ethical framework. They'd have conversations. Share concerns. Give unofficial warnings when someone's application crossed their desk who had a history of problems. I need to tell you about someone, I said when Marcus answered. And then I need you to decide what to do with that information. I'm listening. I told him everything. Not just the professional stuff, the harassment complaints, the investigations, the pattern of behavior. I told him about high school too. About what Derek had done to me. About the note my mom found. About 15 years of therapy and hard work trying to build a life despite what he'd taken from me. Marcus was quiet for a long time after I finished. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, could almost feel him processing, weighing, deciding. "You're asking me to blacklist him," he said finally. "I'm asking you to make sure people know who they're considering hiring. What they do with that information is up to them. That's a distinction without a difference, and you know it. If I put the word out through the network, Derek Hastings will effectively be unhireable at any major tech company. I know. This will end his career in this industry. I know. Can I ask why this is personal?" "I just told you why it's personal." "No, I mean why now? You've been in the industry for 10 years. You've probably had 100 chances to do this before. Why is this the moment you're choosing to act?" I thought about how to answer that. The truth was complicated. The truth was that seeing Derek's name pop up on my phone had cracked something open inside me that I'd thought was healed. The truth was that knowing he'd asked me for help, asked me to vouch for him based on our past friendship, felt like such a profound misunderstanding of reality that it demanded correction. But what I said was simpler, because he asked me to help him get a job at my company. At a place where I'm responsible for people's safety. Where I've spent years building a culture that's supposed to be different from the places that failed to protect his previous victims. He gave me all the information I needed to see that he hasn't changed. That he's still hurting people. That he'll continue hurting people unless someone stops him. So I'm stopping him. By destroying his career. By making sure the truth catches up with him. If that destroys his career, it's because his career was built on people not knowing who he really is. Another long pause. "You understand what you're asking me to be part of?" "I do. And if you're not comfortable with it, I understand. I'll figure out another way." I didn't say I wasn't comfortable with it, Marcus sighed. "I've seen what happens when people like Derek slip through the cracks. When HR departments give them second chances because their performance metrics are good. When companies decide it's easier to settle quietly than address the problem. We're supposed to protect our colleagues, our employees, the people who work for us. That's the job. So you'll help?" "I'll make some calls. I'll share what you've told me with people who need to know. But I need you to be sure about this. Once this information starts circulating, there's no taking it back. Derek will know someone put the word out about him. He might figure out it was you. I'm sure." "Okay then. Send me everything you have. Documentation, sources, timeline. I want to make sure when I talk to people, I'm giving them facts, not speculation." I sent him the comprehensive summary I'd compiled, plus professional assessments from all my conversations with Rachel, James, Michelle, and the background check from Lauren. Everything carefully documented to show patterns of behavior, professional consensus, and publicly available information like the lawsuit citation. Nothing that would violate specific NDAs or confidentiality agreements, but enough to paint a clear picture. Marcus called me back 3 days later. "It's done," he said. "I've talked to 12 people. HR directors at major tech companies, talent acquisition specialists, a few C-suite executives who I trust. I shared the pattern you documented, the consistency across companies, the professional assessments, the publicly available information. Everyone I spoke with now has Derek's name flagged in their systems as someone requiring additional scrutiny if he applies. And they believe the pattern? They believe the consistency. When multiple independent sources at different companies all report similar behavioral concerns, that's hard to dismiss. Nobody wants to be the company that ignored red flags and ended up with a lawsuit or a PR nightmare. I was careful to share only what could be verified through professional networks, general patterns, not specific confidential details." "Thank you, Marcus." "Don't thank me yet. This is going to spread. That's how networks work. Those 12 people will talk to others. The information will circulate. Within a month, most major tech companies will have Derek Hastings marked as a risk in their systems. That's what you wanted, right?" "Yes." "And you're prepared for the consequences?" "What consequences?" "If Derek figures out what happened, he might come after you. Lawsuit, public accusations, social media campaign. People don't always react rationally when their careers implode." I'd thought about that too. Weighed the risk. Decided I could live with it. If he comes after me, I have documentation. I have sources. I have 15 years of therapy records that establish what he did to me. And I have a clear conscience because I didn't lie about anything. I just made sure the truth got told. "Okay then." Marcus paused. "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Not just for yourself. For everyone he would have hurt if someone hadn't stopped him." "I hope so." Within a week, Derek Hastings was a name that circulated through the informal networks of HR directors and talent acquisition specialists. Not officially, there were no announcements, no public blacklisting, No formal documentation that could be traced back to anyone specific. Just conversations. Warnings. The kind of professional courtesy that happens between people who want to protect their organizations and the people who work for them. Hey, we had a candidate come through recently with some serious red flags. Derek Hastings. You might want to check if he's in your system. Have you heard anything about this guy? We're seeing some concerning patterns in his work history. Just wanted to give you a heads up if his resume crosses your desk. There's some history there you should know about. Each conversation spawned more conversations. Each warning prompted others to share what they knew, to check their own records, to add him to their internal watch lists. The network effect was powerful. Within 2 weeks, Derek's name had become synonymous with risk. Derek applied to 7 more companies over the next month. I know because he kept sending me follow-up messages on LinkedIn, his tone gradually shifting from friendly to confused to desperate. Each message was a window into his unraveling. The first follow-up came 2 weeks after his initial message. Hey man, just checking in. Did you get a chance to put in that word for me at Barrington? I know these processes can take a while. No rush, just wanted to follow up. Hope everything's good with you. Still friendly. Still casual. Still convinced we were old buddies who'd just lost touch. 3 weeks later. Hey, I haven't heard back from Barrington yet. Did you forward my resume to HR? I want to make sure it didn't get lost in the shuffle. I've been applying to a few other places too, but really hoping the Barrington thing works out since you're there. Let me know when you have a minute. Slightly more urgent now. The exclamation points were gone. 4 weeks. I'm not sure what's happening, but I've been applying to places and getting nowhere. Applied to Preston Dynamics, Tech Core, Morrison again, a few others. Just getting generic rejection emails or no response at all. Do you know if there's something wrong with my applications? You mentioned you'd put in a good word, but I'm wondering if maybe it didn't get through? Or if there's something else I should be doing differently? Now he was confused. Starting to sense something was wrong but not understanding what. 6 weeks. Okay, I'm getting worried now. I've applied to 11 companies in the past month and gotten rejected from all of them. Some before I even got a first interview. This has never happened before. I've been in this industry 10 years and usually get at least a phone screen. Do you know what's going on? Did you say something to someone? I don't understand what's happening. The friendly facade was cracking. You could see the anxiety bleeding through. 8 weeks. I talked to a recruiter friend and she said something weird is happening with my applications. Like they're getting flagged before they even go to hiring managers. She wouldn't tell me more but said I should look into my references or something. Do you know anything about this? Did something happen with Barrington that I should know about? He was starting to connect dots. Starting to realize this wasn't random. 10 weeks. I'm running out of money. My severance from Morrison is almost gone and I can't get hired anywhere. I've applied to 23 companies. 23. I'm qualified for these positions. I've got 10 years of experience. This doesn't make sense unless someone is deliberately sabotaging me. If you know something, just tell me. Please. Raw now. Desperate. The polish was completely gone. 12 weeks in, something changed. I found out later from Marcus that one of the companies Derek had applied to, Tech Core Solutions, had actually called him. Not to offer an interview. To tell him why he was being rejected. The HR director there, someone Marcus knew personally, had felt it was more ethical to be direct rather than send another generic rejection. She called Derek and told him his application had been flagged due to credible reports of workplace misconduct at previous employers and that after conducting reference checks through professional networks, we've determined you're not a cultural fit for our organization. She didn't name sources. Didn't violate any confidentiality. But she gave him enough information to understand that his past had caught up with him. That someone had made sure of it. Marcus told me Derek had apparently broken down on the phone. Asked who had reported him. Insisted it was all lies. Threatened legal action. The HR director had calmly told him that if he felt the information was inaccurate, he was welcome to pursue legal remedies, but Tech Core's decision was final. After that call, Derek's messages to me changed tone completely. Then, at 2:37 a.m. on a Wednesday night, clearly written after several drinks, based on the spelling errors and rambling quality, the message that made my hands shake. I don't know what you did, but I know you did something. People keep telling me positions are filled before I even interview. A recruiter I worked with at Preston told me off the record that my name is flagged in their system for cultural concerns, whatever that means. I've been in this industry 10 years and suddenly nobody will hire me. Suddenly I'm unemployable. This happened right after I contacted you. Right after. That's not a coincidence. What did you tell them? What lies did you spread? I need this job. I have a mortgage. I have bills. I can't just not work. What did you do? I stared at that message for a long time. My wife was asleep. The house was quiet. Just me and my phone and Derek's desperation glowing on the screen. Part of me felt satisfied. Vindicated. He was finally experiencing consequences. Finally understanding what it felt like to be powerless, to watch your life fall apart because of someone else's actions. But another part of me felt something darker. Not quite guilt, but an awareness of my own capacity for destruction. I'd done this. Me. I'd made phone calls, sent emails, shared information. I'd used every bit of professional capital I'd built over a decade to ensure Derek Hastings couldn't find work in our industry. And it had worked. Perfectly. Completely. The power was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. I didn't respond that night. Or the next day. Or the day after that. I let his message sit there, unanswered, while I wrestled with what to say. Whether to say anything at all. Whether silence or engagement was the right choice. My therapist would probably tell me that engaging was a mistake. That responding would just open a dialogue Derek could use to manipulate the situation, to play victim, to rewrite history. Dr. Chen had spent years helping me set boundaries. Teaching me that I didn't owe explanations to people who'd hurt me. But I also knew that silence could be misinterpreted. That if Derek was spiraling, if his life was imploding, if he was truly desperate, silence might make me complicit in whatever happened next. And despite everything he'd done, despite every valid reason I had to hate him, I didn't want his destruction. I just wanted protection. Safety. Justice. Those things aren't always the same, but I'd convinced myself they were. 3 weeks after his drunken message, I got a final one. This one sober, calculated, cold. I looked into it. I hired someone to help me figure out what was happening. I found out what you did. You spread lies about me to the entire industry. You called my former employers. You shared confidential information. You ruined my career because of some high school stuff that happened when we were kids. That's insane. That's psychotic. I'm not that person anymore. People change. You don't get to judge me for things that happened 15 years ago. You don't get to destroy my life because you're still stuck in high school. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to sue you for defamation. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did. You think you're better than me? You're worse. At least I was just a kid who made mistakes. You're an adult who deliberately destroyed someone's career out of revenge. Think about that. I read it 3 times. Felt my chest tighten with each pass. The accusations stung, even knowing they were based on Derek's distorted version of events. The threat of a lawsuit made my hands shake. The claim that he'd just made mistakes as a kid ignited something hot and sharp in my chest. But underneath all that, beneath the defensiveness and fear and anger, was clarity. Derek thought this was about high school. Thought I'd weaponized his teenage behavior to destroy his adult life. He genuinely believed people change, that he'd changed, that holding him accountable for his past was unfair. He didn't understand that I hadn't told anyone about high school. That everything I'd shared with my network was about his recent behavior. His adult choices. His pattern of harassment across multiple companies. He'd created his own destruction through years of hurting people, and he was so convinced of his own victimhood that he couldn't see it. That realization made my decision easier. I typed a response. Let it sit in drafts for 2 days while I edited, revised, considered every word. Finally, I sent it. Derek, you're right about one thing, people do change. I changed. I went from being a suicidal 16-year-old who had notes written and ready to go to being someone who built a successful career and a life I'm proud of. I changed because my mom found those notes before I could act on them and got me help. Because I spent years in therapy learning how to process trauma and move forward. Because I made the conscious decision every single day to be better than what happened to me. I changed because I did the work. You want to know what I told people about you? The truth, but not in the way you think. I didn't share confidential HR documents or violate anyone's NDAs. I spoke with professional colleagues who worked at your previous companies and asked for their honest assessments. I compiled publicly available information, including a lawsuit where you were named as a contributor to a hostile work environment. I had a background specialist review your employment history and reference patterns. What emerged was a consistent pattern across multiple independent sources: complaints about harassment, investigations into hostile behavior, departures from companies related to misconduct, and a track record that multiple HR professionals independently identified as high risk. I shared this pattern, not confidential details, but the overall picture, with people in my professional network so they could make informed decisions about whether to hire you. That's not spreading lies. That's connecting dots that you left scattered across 3 different companies over 10 years. None of that is high school stuff, Derek. That's who you are now. That's who you've been as an adult in professional settings. You didn't change. You just moved your behavior from hallways to offices, from students to colleagues. The only thing I did was make sure the truth caught up with you. I gave HR professionals at various companies factual information about patterns I'd observed through professional networks, publicly available information, and honest assessments from people who worked with you. Information they needed to make informed hiring decisions. If that ruined your career, it's because your career was built on people not knowing the full story. On companies giving you second chances without knowing about the third and fourth and fifth chances you'd already burned through at previous jobs. As for high school, you spent 2 years making my life so miserable that I wanted to die. Not figuratively. Literally. I wrote notes. I made a plan. I was days away from ending my life when my mom found those notes and intervened. I spent 15 years recovering from what you did to me. 15 years of therapy. Of rebuilding myself. Of learning that the things you said about me weren't true even though everyone believed them. So no, I don't feel bad about making sure people know what kind of person you are before they hire you. I don't feel bad about protecting the people who would have worked with you. The women who would have been subjected to your comments and behavior. The colleagues who would have had to file HR complaints that may or may not have been taken seriously. And I definitely don't feel bad about the fact that you're finally experiencing consequences for your actions. You asked me to put in a good word for you. I put in the perfect word. An honest one. A truthful one backed by documentation from multiple sources. If you want to sue me for defamation, go ahead. I have documentation of every conversation I had. Every piece of information I shared was either publicly available, a professional assessment from someone with direct knowledge, or a pattern observation based on multiple independent sources. I never lied. I never embellished. I never shared confidential documentation that wasn't mine to share. I just made sure the pattern of your behavior across multiple companies became visible to people who needed to see it to protect their organizations. As for being stuck in high school, I'm not stuck there. I survived it. I moved past it. I built a good life despite what you did to me. But that doesn't mean I'm going to help you hurt more people just because some time has passed. It doesn't mean I'm going to ignore a pattern of behavior that proves you haven't changed. You're right that you were a kid when you tortured me. But you're an adult now who continue that same pattern of behavior in different contexts. The problem isn't that you made teenage mistakes. The problem is that you never stopped making those mistakes. You never learned. You never grew, you just got older. I hope you figure out how to actually change. I hope you get help. I hope you learn to treat people with basic human decency. But those things are your responsibility, not mine. I did what I thought was right. If you think that makes me the villain in your story, I can live with that. Don't contact me again. I sent it and immediately blocked him on LinkedIn. Blocked his email address. Blocked his phone number I found through a quick search. I didn't want to see his response. Didn't want to engage further. Didn't want to give him any avenue to manipulate the situation or try to rewrite history. It was done. The finality of it felt strange. Anticlimactic, almost. I'd spent weeks building toward this moment, gathering information, making calls, constructing Derek's downfall piece by careful piece. And now it was finished. Complete. Over. I sat with my laptop closed in front of me, in the home office my wife and I had set up during the early months of our marriage, and felt empty. Not satisfied. Not vindicated. Not triumphant. Just empty. My therapist asked me how I felt about it during our next session. We'd scheduled a video call for that Thursday, our usual time. Dr. Chen's office background was familiar by now, the bookshelf behind her, the plant in the corner, the soft lighting that made her space feel safe. Tell me what you're feeling, she said after I'd given her the basic outline of what had happened. I don't know. That's the problem. I thought I'd feel something. Relief, maybe. Or satisfaction. But mostly I just feel tired. And a little sick. Sick how? Like maybe I went too far. Like maybe destroying someone's career, even someone who hurt me, even someone who hurt a lot of other people, is still too much. Like maybe I'm just as bad as he is now. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment, the way she always was when she wanted me to sit with a thought before she responded. Do you believe that? That you're just as bad as Derek? I don't know. I used my power to hurt him. Isn't that what he did to me? Is it? Let's think about that. What did Derek do to you in high school? He tortured me. Humiliated me. Spread lies about me that destroyed my reputation and my relationships. Made me want to die. And what did you do to Derek? I told the truth about his behavior to people who needed to know it to make informed decisions about hiring him. Is telling the truth about someone's documented professional misconduct the same as lying about them to destroy their reputation? No, but you still feel guilty, Dr. Chen said gently. You feel guilty because you have empathy. Because you can imagine how Derek feels right now, desperate, angry, scared about his future. Because you're a person who cares about others even when they've hurt you. That's not a character flaw. That's actually evidence that you're not like him. I was quiet, thinking about that. Let me ask you something else, she continued. If you hadn't said anything, if you'd just gotten Derek's application rejected at your company and left it at that, what would have happened? He would have applied elsewhere. Probably gotten hired somewhere. Probably hurt more people. Probably. Based on his pattern of behavior across multiple companies, that seems likely. So what did you actually do? I made sure that pattern of behavior was visible to people who needed to see it. I connected the dots across different companies so HR professionals could make informed decisions. That's protection, not revenge. That's using information you legitimately had access to in order to prevent future harm. Yes, it had the effect of ending Derek's career in your industry. But that wasn't your goal. Your goal was to protect potential victims. Was it? Or was I just telling myself that to justify revenge? Can it be both? Can you have wanted to protect others and also wanted Derek to face consequences? And would that make it wrong? I thought about the women at Morrison Solutions. At Carver and Associates. At TechFlow. The ones who'd filed complaints and watched nothing happen. The ones who'd been asked to keep working with someone who made them uncomfortable because his numbers were good. The ones who eventually quit because fighting was exhausting and expensive and often futile. I thought about my team at Barrington Tech. The talented women I'd hired who deserved to work in an environment where they felt safe. Who deserved better than having to navigate another Derek Hastings. I don't regret protecting people from someone who would have hurt them, I said finally. I don't regret making sure his past caught up with him. But I don't feel good about it either. I just feel done. Done is okay, Dr. Chen said. Done is healthy. You're allowed to protect yourself and others without having to enjoy it. You're allowed to enforce consequences without celebrating someone else's suffering. That's actually the difference between justice and cruelty. Justice is about protection and accountability, while cruelty is about causing pain for its own sake. You weren't trying to cause Derek pain. You were trying to prevent him from causing pain to others. But I did cause him pain. Yes. And that's an appropriate consequence for his behavior. That's what accountability looks like. It's not always comfortable to enforce it, especially for people who value empathy and compassion. But sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is make sure someone can't continue hurting people. We talked for another 40 minutes about moral complexity, about the difference between revenge and justice, about how to sit with uncomfortable feelings without letting them consume you. By the end of the session, I didn't feel absolved exactly. But I felt like maybe I could live with what I'd done. Maybe I could carry the weight of it without being crushed. That night, my wife asked me if everything was okay. We were in bed, her head on my shoulder, the room dark except for the ambient light from the street coming through the curtains. Define okay, I said. You've been quiet lately. Distracted. Something's bothering you. I told her. Not everything, but the important parts. About Derek's message. About what I'd discovered about his employment history. About the choice I'd made to spread that information through my network. About the consequences. She was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then she said, "Did you lie about anything?" "No. Everything I told people was true and documented." "Did you do it to hurt him or to protect others?" "Both, I think. Maybe mostly to protect others, but I can't pretend I didn't want him to face consequences too." "That seems fair. He destroyed your life once and never apologized. Never showed remorse. Never changed his behavior. And then he had the audacity to ask you for help. You protected your company and your colleagues from someone with a pattern of hurting people. The fact that you feel guilty about it just proves you're a better person than he is." I ended his career. He ended his own career by harassing people at 3 different companies. You just made sure the truth didn't stay hidden. There's a difference. I wanted to believe that. Most days, I did believe it. Some days, I wasn't so sure. It's been 6 months now since that first LinkedIn message. I still think about it sometimes. Late at night when I can't sleep. When I'm scrolling through my phone in that same brain-dead way and a memory surfaces unbidden. I wonder what Derek is doing now. If he found a job eventually, maybe in a different industry where his reputation hadn't followed him. If he actually changed after all this or if he just got angrier, more bitter, more convinced he was the victim. I wonder if he thinks about high school the way I do, as a defining trauma that shaped everything that came after, or if those memories are just background noise to him. Funny stories. Youthful indiscretions. Things that don't matter anymore. I wonder if he ever understood what he did to me. If he ever connected the 16-year-old kid whose head he held underwater to the adult professional who ensured his past caught up with him. If he ever had a moment of genuine reflection where he recognized his own pattern of behavior and felt actual remorse. Probably not. People like Derek rarely do. They're too invested in their own narrative of victimhood to see the harm they cause others. Mostly though, I think about that 16-year-old version of myself. The one with the notes in the drawer. The one who counted humiliations in a notebook and thought disappearing was the only solution. The one who believed Derek when Derek said he was worthless. That nobody would miss him. That he'd be doing everyone a favor by leaving. I think about what I'd tell him if I could go back. That it gets better. That he'll survive. That he'll build a life and a career and friendships with people who see his value. That he'll find someone who loves him. That the pain doesn't disappear but it does get quieter, more manageable, less all-consuming. And I think I'd tell him something else too. That someday, Derek Hastings will ask him for a favor. And when that day comes, he'll have a choice about what kind of person he wants to be. About whether to enable further harm or to finally enforce some consequences. I'd like to think I made the right choice. That protecting future victims outweighed the personal satisfaction of revenge. That truth and consequences are justice, not cruelty. That using power responsibly means ensuring dangerous people can't continue hurting others. But I'm not entirely sure that 16-year-old would agree with me. I think he'd look at what I did and see something simpler. Something cleaner. Something that didn't require all this moral complexity and second-guessing and therapy sessions about whether I'd gone too far. He'd see a bully finally getting what he deserved. And maybe that's enough. Maybe done is enough. Maybe the fact that I can think about Derek Hastings now without my hands shaking, without tasting chlorine water, without hearing those voices telling me to kill myself, maybe that's its own kind of victory. I don't know if this was the right thing to do. I'm not sure there is a right thing when it comes to situations like this. It's messy and complicated and morally gray no matter how you justify it. Revenge disguised as protection, or protection with an element of revenge, or maybe just consequences that were 15 years overdue. But I know this, Derek asked me to put in a good word for him, based on our past friendship, as if we'd been buddies who just lost touch. As if those years of torture never happened. As if he could ask me for help and expect me to give it. I put in a word for him. The perfect word. An honest word. A truthful word backed by documentation and multiple sources. A word that made sure hiring managers knew exactly who they were considering bringing into their organizations. If that destroyed his career, it's because his career was built on lies by omission. On companies not knowing his full history. On people giving him chances without understanding how many chances he'd already blown. On victims staying silent because speaking up is hard and scary and often futile. I made sure the truth got told. Made sure his pattern of behavior was visible to the people who needed to see it. Made sure future victims had protection that past victims never got. For old time's sake. That last part still makes me smile sometimes, in a dark way. Derek used that phrase like it meant something positive. Like our old times were fond memories worth invoking. Like we were former friends reconnecting, not victim and abuser colliding 15 years later. Maybe that's the most telling thing about him. That he could ask me for help with a straight face. That he genuinely didn't understand what he'd done or how it had affected me. That he'd rewritten history so thoroughly in his own mind that he believed his own revised version. Or maybe he did understand and just didn't care. Maybe he thought enough time had passed that I'd have forgiven him. Or forgotten. Or decided it wasn't worth holding on to. He was wrong about that. I didn't forget. Didn't forgive. Didn't decide to let it go just because some time had passed. I built a life despite what he did to me, but I never pretended it didn't happen. Never minimized it. Never accepted the narrative that it was just kids being kids or youthful mistakes or anything other than what it was, sustained, deliberate cruelty that nearly killed me. So when he asked for help, I helped. Just not in the way he expected. I helped make sure he couldn't hurt anyone else the way he hurt me. The way he hurt all those women at his previous companies. The way he would have hurt people at Barrington Tech if I'd let him through the door. And if that makes me a bad person, if that crosses some moral line I should have respected, if that makes me just as bad as him in some karmic accounting, I can live with that. Because at least the people he would have hurt are safe now. At least future victims were spared. At least consequences finally caught up with someone who'd spent his entire life avoiding them. That has to count for something. I hope it counts for enough. Story 3.
My husband looked at me and said flatly, "I'm not missing boys' night for your hospital emergency appointment." I was having severe chest pains and could barely breathe. I just nodded and drove myself to the ER alone. The next morning, he came home hungover asking what the doctor said. I told him I was fine. 3 days later, divorce papers arrived at his office. His call came immediately, the cracking of his voice, "You're really leaving me over one night?" held more desperation and emotion than he'd shown during our entire 5-year marriage. I'm writing this because I need someone to know what really happened. Not the version Jake tells his friends. Not the sanitized story my mother-in-law shares at book club. The truth sits in my chest like a stone, and maybe if I get it out, I'll finally sleep through the night again. The chest pain started 3 weeks before that night. Sharp, radiating things that made me gasp in the middle of folding laundry or responding to work emails. I'd press my palm against my sternum and wait for them to pass, telling myself it was stress. Anxiety. Maybe I needed to cut back on coffee. Jake noticed once. We were watching television, some crime show he liked where they always caught the bad guy in 42 minutes, and I doubled over without meaning to. He glanced at me during a commercial break. "You good?" "Yeah. Just a cramp or something." He nodded and turned back to the screen. The episode resumed, and we never spoke about it again. That should have told me everything I needed to know. But you don't see the pattern when you're standing inside it, do you? You make excuses. He's tired from work. He's stressed about the promotion. He shows love differently than I do. I had a whole collection of justifications, carefully curated over 5 years of marriage, polished smooth from overuse. The night it got bad, really bad, I was making dinner. Chicken marsala, his favorite. I'd stopped at 3 different stores to find the right mushrooms because he hated the pre-sliced ones, said they tasted like rubber. The pain hit me while I was deglazing the pan, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies, but the terrifying kind where your lungs just won't expand properly. Like someone had wrapped plastic wrap around my chest and was pulling it tighter with each attempted breath. I gripped the counter. Tried to inhale slowly through my nose. The kitchen swam at the edges. "Jake?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Jake, I think something's wrong." He was in the living room, getting ready for boys' night. I could hear him moving around, the jingle of his keys, the rustle of his jacket. He appeared in the doorway, already impatient. He had that look he got when I was interrupting something important, eyebrows slightly raised, mouth set in a thin line. "What's up?" "I can't breathe right. My chest really hurts. I think I need to go to the hospital." He checked his watch. Actually lifted his wrist and checked the time while I was struggling to fill my lungs. "Babe, the guys are waiting. Can't you just take some Tylenol and see how you feel? It's probably anxiety. You've been stressed about that work thing." "Jake, I'm serious. Something's really wrong. Look, I'm already late. If it's still bad in the morning, we'll go then, okay? Just try to relax." The wheel was a lie, and we both knew it. But I was so desperate for him to stay that I almost believed it anyway. Almost convinced myself that waiting made sense. He was already halfway to the door, keys in hand, when the words came out. "I'm not missing boys' night for your hospital emergency appointment." He said it flat, like he was turning down a telemarketer. Emergency in air quotes, verbal and dismissive. Like I was a child pretending to be sick to skip school. Then he left, and I heard his truck start in the driveway, heard it fade down our quiet suburban street while I stood there with one hand on the counter and the other pressed against my chest, trying to remember how normal breathing was supposed to feel. I turned off the stove. The marsala sauce had started to burn at the edges, and the kitchen smelled wrong, acrid and bitter. I packed the food into containers with shaking hands, moving on autopilot because if I stopped moving I might fall apart, and I couldn't afford to fall apart in an empty house with my chest on fire and no one coming to check on me. The drive to the ER was 7 miles. I know because I counted every single one, narrating them to myself to stay focused. Madison Avenue to Fulton Street. Fulton to the bypass. Bypass to Hospital Road. My phone sat in the cup holder, screen dark. I could have called someone. My sister, maybe, or my friend Rachel who only lived 15 minutes away. But the humiliation of admitting that my husband had left me like this felt worse than driving myself, so I just kept going, hands at 10 and 2, breathing as shallowly as I could manage. The ER was crowded, bright with fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick even if they weren't. I checked in at the desk, and the nurse took one look at me and brought me back within minutes. They hooked me up to monitors, asked questions I answered in fragments. Chest pain, yes. How long? Maybe 40 minutes of the really bad kind. Radiating where? Everywhere? My whole chest, down my left arm. Any history of heart problems? No, but my dad had a heart attack at 52 and I'm 31, so maybe that matters. They did an EKG. Blood work. Chest X-ray. Everything moved with urgent efficiency, and I felt simultaneously grateful and terrified because the speed meant they were worried, and if they were worried then maybe I should have insisted Jake stay, maybe I should have called an ambulance, maybe I was actually dying in this sterile room with its beeping machines and smell of antiseptic while my husband was at O'Malley's pub watching sports highlights with his friends. A doctor came in eventually. Young, tired-looking, but kind. She had that particular gentleness healthcare workers develop when delivering complicated news. "Your EKG looks okay," she said, pulling up a stool. "No signs of a heart attack. But your troponin levels are slightly elevated, which can indicate cardiac stress. We're going to keep you for observation and run some more tests." "What does that mean? Cardiac stress?" "It means your heart is working harder than it should be. Could be a lot of things. We'll figure it out." She squeezed my hand before she left, that small gesture of comfort, and I started crying. Not sobbing, just silent tears that I couldn't stop, running down my cheeks while I lay there alone in a hospital gown under a thin blanket, wondering when exactly my marriage had become something where this was acceptable. where I was so afraid of being inconvenient that I'd rather drive myself to the ER than insist my husband cancel plans. They kept me overnight for monitoring. The night shift nurse, an older woman named Denise with bifocals on a beaded chain, brought me extra blankets and a better pillow without me asking. Around 2 in the morning, when I still couldn't sleep despite the exhaustion, she sat with me for a few minutes. "No one coming to sit with you, honey?" My husband had plans. I didn't want to bother him. She looked at me over her glasses, long and steady, and didn't say anything. Didn't need to. The silence said enough. Jake came home around 11 the next morning. I heard his truck in the driveway, that particular rumble of the engine he was so proud of, the slam of the door. He came into the bedroom where I was lying down, still in yesterday's clothes because I'd driven straight home from the hospital and collapsed. He smelled like bar soap and regret, his eyes bloodshot, hair still damp from a shower. "Hey. How'd it go? What did the doctor say?" He asked it casually, the way you'd ask about a dentist appointment or an oil change. Like he hadn't abandoned me when I was struggling to breathe. Like those air quotes around emergency hadn't carved themselves into my memory. I looked at him standing in the doorway of our bedroom, this man I'd married 5 years ago in that garden ceremony we'd spent months planning, and felt something shift. Not dramatically. Not with the clarity people describe in movies. Just a quiet internal sliding, like a lock clicking out of place. "I'm fine. Nothing serious. Just stress." The lie came easily. He nodded, relieved, already turning toward the kitchen. "Good. That's good. I knew it probably wasn't a big deal. You want some breakfast? I could make eggs." "No, thank you. I'm going to rest." He left, and I heard him in the kitchen making noise, opening cabinets, running water. Normal domestic sounds. I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting the swirls in the popcorn texture, and something in me hardened. Crystallized. Became clear and cold and very, very certain. I'd spent 2 years in marriage counseling with him. 2 years of weekly sessions where I talked about feeling invisible and he nodded and promised to be more present. 2 years of reading books about love languages and attachment styles, trying to crack the code that would make him see me. Really see me. Not as the person who made his favorite meals and kept the house organized and laughed at his jokes when his friends came over. But as someone whole and complex and deserving of basic concern when she said she couldn't breathe. The chest pains were real. The cardiac stress was real. But the final diagnosis, when it came through 2 days later, was what they called stress-induced cardiomyopathy. My heart was literally weakening from stress. From being in a marriage that required so much emotional contortion that my body was starting to break down, I called my sister first. Megan, 3 years older, infinitely wiser in ways I'd spent years resenting but had recently started to appreciate. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, what's up? I need the name of your divorce lawyer." Silence on the other end. Long enough that I checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. "Megan? I'm here. I just need a second to not say I told you so because I'm your sister and I love you and that would be petty." "But you did tell me so." "I did. Multiple times. But I take no pleasure in being right about this. Are you okay? What happened?" I told her everything. The chest pains, the hospital, Jake's dismissal, the diagnosis. She listened without interrupting, which was how I knew it was bad. Megan always interrupted. It was her default mode of conversation. When she stayed silent, it meant she was actively restraining herself from saying something that would make things worse. "Give me 2 hours," she said when I finished. "I'm calling Sandra Vega. She handled my divorce, and she's exactly who you need. Shark in a pantsuit. She'll eat Jake alive. I don't want to destroy him. I just want out." "Honey, sometimes those are the same thing. And after what you just told me, I think a little destruction might be warranted." Sandra Vega looked exactly like her name suggested she would, sharp, polished, expensive. Her office was downtown, all glass and chrome and artwork that probably cost more than my car. She shook my hand firmly and gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Megan speaks highly of you. Tell me what's going on." I told the story again. It was getting easier with repetition, the words coming out smoother, less likely to catch in my throat. Sandra took notes on a legal pad, her pen moving in quick, efficient strokes. "Here's what I'm hearing," she said when I finished. 5-year marriage, no children, you both work full-time. You own a house together, purchased 3 years ago. You've got joint accounts, joint assets, the standard entanglement. And you want out as quickly and cleanly as possible. "Yes." And he has no idea this is coming. None. She smiled then, and it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who'd seen this exact scenario hundreds of times and knew precisely how it would unfold. Good. That's an advantage. Here's what we're going to do. Over the next 2 hours, Sandra laid out the strategy. I would say nothing to Jake. No hints, no warnings, no final conversations where I tried to explain or make him understand. We'd file the papers, have them served at his office during work hours when he'd be forced to maintain composure and couldn't immediately confront me. In the meantime, I would quietly document everything, our finances, our assets, his patterns of behavior. I would prepare to move out the same day he got served, stay with Megan for as long as I needed. He's going to call you, Sandra warned. The second he gets those papers, he's going to call. Don't answer. Let it go to voicemail. He'll leave messages, probably a lot of them. Angry ones, sad ones, bargaining ones. Don't respond to any of them. Everything goes through me from now on. What if he comes to Megan's house? If he shows up, you call the police. No conversations, no explanations. I've seen men like this, Emily. They don't understand the gravity of what they've done until it's too late to fix it. Right now, he thinks you're fine. He thinks everything is fine. When those papers hit his desk, it's going to shatter his reality. He'll do anything to put it back together. But that's not your problem anymore. I signed the retainer agreement with shaking hands. The amount made me wince, but Megan had offered to help with costs, and besides, what was I saving the money for? A marriage that was killing me? The next 3 days were surreal. I went to work, came home, made dinner, watched television with Jake. On the surface, everything looked normal. But underneath, I was systematically dismantling our life together. I photographed documents. I opened a new bank account in my name only and had my direct deposit changed. I packed a suitcase and stored it in my car trunk. I sorted through our belongings mentally, deciding what was mine, what was his, what I'd fight for, and what I'd let go. Jake noticed nothing. That was perhaps the most telling part. I was preparing to blow up our entire marriage, and he was oblivious. Too busy with work, with his friends, with the comfortable routine we'd fallen into where I managed all the emotional labor and he just showed up. On Tuesday evening, 3 days after my meeting with Sandra, he came home excited about something. I was in the kitchen again, always in the kitchen, making dinner because that's what I did. That's what I'd always done. Hey, so the guys want to do a fishing trip next month. 4 days up at Morrison Lake. I already told them I was in. Not asking permission. Not checking if I had plans or needed him home. Just announcing his decision and expecting me to accommodate it. That sounds nice. Yeah, should be great. Steve's bringing his new boat. I stirred the pasta sauce and said nothing. Tomorrow, he'd get the papers. Tomorrow, he'd realize that Morrison Lake wasn't happening. That nothing was happening the way he'd planned. Wednesday morning, I called in sick to work. Megan came over after Jake left, and we spent 4 hours loading my things into her SUV. Clothes, books, personal items, the jewelry box my grandmother had left me. The photo albums, because those were mine even if the memories inside them had soured. We moved efficiently, stripping away evidence of me room by room until the house looked like a stage set for a bachelor, not a married couple. I left the marsala sauce in the freezer. Petty, maybe, but it felt significant. All those dinners I'd made, all those accommodations and adjustments and attempts to earn his attention through perfectly cooked meals. Let him find it months from now, freezer burned and forgotten, and wonder what it was supposed to be. The papers were served at 1:30 that afternoon. I know because Sandra texted me, package delivered. Don't answer your phone. My phone started ringing at 1:43. I watched Jake's name light up the screen, watched it ring through to voicemail, then ring again. And again. By 2 o'clock, I had 6 missed calls. By 3:12. The voicemails started around call 4. What the heck is this? Call me back right now. Emily, this isn't funny. I don't know what's going on, but we need to talk. Please just call me. Please. I'm freaking out here. I'm coming home. I need to see you. Where are you? Your car's gone. Please. His voice changed as the messages progressed. Started angry and confused, moved through panic, landed somewhere around desperation. By message 8, he was crying. I don't understand. You're really leaving me over one night? One stupid night where I made a mistake? That's what this is about, right? The hospital thing? I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please just talk to me. Please don't do this. I listened to them all, sitting in Megan's guest room with my phone on speaker, and felt nothing. Or not nothing exactly, but nothing like what I'd expected to feel. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just a hollow kind of exhaustion, like I'd been holding my breath for 5 years and could finally exhale. Megan knocked on the door around 6. He's here. Parked on the street. I looked out the window. Jake's truck sat 3 houses down, him visible in the driver's seat. Watching. Waiting. Don't go out there, Megan said. Let him sit. He'll leave eventually. But he didn't leave. He stayed until after midnight, his truck a constant presence, a vigil or a threat depending on how you looked at it. Megan's husband, Tom, went out once around 9 to tell him to move along, but Jake just stared at him and didn't respond. Tom came back looking uncomfortable. He's a mess. Crying and everything. Said he just wants to talk to you. Not my problem, I said, and meant it. Thursday morning, Jake was gone, but Sandra called at 8. He hired a lawyer. Guy named Mitchell Barnes. Aggressive type, loves courtroom drama. This just got more complicated. What does that mean? It means he's going to fight. The house, the assets, everything. He's going to make this as difficult as possible, probably hoping you'll cave and talk to him. Some men, when they realize they're losing control, they try to drag out the process. Make it painful. Make you regret filing. Let him try. Sandra's smile was audible through the phone. That's what I like to hear. Forward me any messages he sends. We'll use them. The messages continued. Text now, since I wasn't answering calls. Long, rambling paragraphs that swung between apologetic and accusatory. I know I messed up, but this is extreme. 5 years of marriage and you won't even talk to me? That's cruel, M. Everyone makes mistakes. I've apologized. What more do you want from me? My mom is devastated. You were like a daughter to her. How can you do this to our family? I saw a counselor yesterday. She said we can work through this if we both try. Will you at least try? You're being manipulated by your sister. She never liked me. Can't you see that? I forwarded every single one to Sandra without responding. She was building a case, she said, documenting his attempts at manipulation and control. It felt clinical, reducing our marriage to evidence and exhibits, but maybe that's what it had been all along. Just evidence that 2 people could live together and never really know each other. Friday, Jake tried a different approach. Flowers showed up at Megan's house. 24 red roses with a card that said, I love you. I'm fighting for us. I put them in the recycling bin, vase and all. Saturday, he showed up at the grocery store where I was shopping. Not coincidence, he must have been tracking my location through our shared phone account, something I'd need to change immediately. He approached me in the cereal aisle, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Emily, please. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Through the lawyers, Jake. I'm your husband. Not for much longer. His face crumpled. How can you be this cold? This isn't you. You're the kindest person I know. Where's my wife? She drove herself to the ER while having a heart attack and you called it an emergency in air quotes. That's where she went. I walked away, left my half-full card in the aisle, and drove back to Megan's with my hands steady on the wheel. He didn't follow. Small mercy. The legal process dragged on, just like Sandra predicted. Jake's lawyer filed motions, requested continuances, tried every delaying tactic available. We were supposed to mediate the asset division, but Jake refused to be reasonable. Wanted the house even though he couldn't afford it without my income. Wanted the furniture we'd bought together, the artwork, the expensive espresso machine I'd gotten him for our anniversary. He's trying to keep pieces of you, Sandra explained over coffee 3 weeks into the proceedings. Some people think if they can just hold on to enough remnants, they can reconstruct what they lost. He doesn't want the espresso machine because he loves espresso. He wants it because it represents a time when you loved him enough to buy it. I'm not sure I ever loved him. Not really. I think I loved the idea of being married. Of having someone. I was so afraid of being alone that I accepted crumbs and called it a feast. That's very poetic. You should write that down. But for now, we need to talk strategy. We went to court in early December, 6 weeks after Jake had been served. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, less dramatic. Judge Patricia Chen presided, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who looked like she'd heard every excuse and believed none of them. Jake sat across the aisle with Mitchell Barnes, wearing a suit I'd helped him pick out for a wedding 2 years ago. He kept glancing at me, trying to catch my eye, but I looked straight ahead. Sandra had coached me on this: don't engage, don't react, don't give him anything to work with. The proceedings were technical, boring even. Sandra presented our case: irreconcilable differences, equitable division of assets, no spousal support requested by either party. Barnes argued for reconciliation counseling, a waiting period, anything to delay the inevitable. Judge Chen listened impassively. Mr. Crawford, have you and your wife attempted marriage counseling? Jake stood. Yes, Your Honor. 2 years of it. But this situation, this divorce filing, it came out of nowhere. My wife won't even speak to me to explain what changed. I think if we could just talk. Mr. Crawford, Judge Chen interrupted, your wife filed for divorce. She doesn't owe you a conversation. This court is not a counseling service. If Mrs. Crawford wishes to dissolve this marriage, that's her prerogative. Now, regarding the asset division. I watched Jake's face during the judge's words. Watched the realization sink in that he'd lost. Not just the marriage, but the control he thought he had. The ability to charm or persuade or wait me out. It was really over, and there was nothing he could do about it. We settled that day. I got my car, my personal belongings, half the savings account. Jake kept the house. He'd have to refinance to buy out my equity, but that was his problem. I didn't want anything that reminded me of those 5 years. Clean break, Sandra called it. Surgical. Walking out of that courthouse, December wind cutting through my coat, I felt lighter than I had in years. Free in a way I'd forgotten was possible. Megan was waiting in her car, engine running for warmth. How do you feel? Like I can breathe. That night, the chest pains came back. Sharp, familiar, terrifying. I sat on the edge of Megan's guest bed, hand pressed to my sternum, and started to panic. Not again. I couldn't do this again. But then I recognized it for what it was: anxiety. Panic attack, maybe. The body remembering trauma, playing it back in physical form. I breathed through it like the ER doctor had taught me. Slow inhales, slower exhales. The pain subsided after a few minutes, and I lay back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling in a room that wasn't mine but felt safer than anywhere I'd been in years. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Jake's mom. I don't know what happened between you two, but he's devastated. He loves you so much. Won't you reconsider? I blocked the number without responding. Then blocked Jake's number. Then blocked anyone else who might try to guilt me into coming back. That's what people don't tell you about leaving. It's not the dramatic exit that's hard. It's the aftermath. The constant pressure to justify yourself, to prove that your reasons were good enough, to convince people that you're not the villain for wanting to survive. Everyone wants the story to be more complicated than it is. They want abuse or cheating or some clear-cut justification. They can't accept that sometimes people just stop mattering to each other, or never mattered in the way they should have. Jake left me to drive myself to the hospital while I was having a cardiac event. That's the story. Not the whole story, but the truest part of it. Everything else was just build up to that moment of clarity when I realized that I'd rather be alone than with someone who saw my pain as an inconvenience. The divorce finalized in February. Valentine's Day, ironically. Sandra texted me a photo of the signed decree with a champagne bottle emoji. I was at work, sitting in a meeting about quarterly projections, and had to excuse myself to the bathroom to process the news in private. It was done. Really, truly done. I stayed with Megan for 3 months total. Long enough to save first and last month's rent, to find a small apartment downtown, to start building a life that was entirely mine. The apartment was tiny, barely big enough for my furniture, but it faced east and got morning sunlight and had a kitchen where I could make whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, without considering anyone else's preferences. I made marsala sauce once, that first week in the new place. Stood at the stove stirring and crying, not from sadness but from something closer to relief. Or release, maybe. The grief of it all catching up now that I was safe enough to feel it. My phone rang while I was cooking. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. M? Jake's voice, tentative and small. How did you get this number? Your mom gave it to me. Don't be mad at her. I begged. I needed to tell you something. I should have hung up. Sandra would have told me to hang up. But curiosity won out. You have 1 minute. I'm in therapy. Real therapy, not the couples counseling we did before. And I'm starting to understand things. About myself, about how I treated you. My therapist says I have avoidant attachment and emotional regulation issues, which I guess explains why I shut down instead of engaging with your needs. That's great, Jake. I'm glad you're getting help. I'm not telling you this to win you back. I know that's not possible. I destroyed that. I just wanted you to know that you weren't crazy for leaving. You were right. About all of it. The words hung in the air between us, carried across whatever distance separated our phones. I stirred the marsala sauce, watched it bubble and reduce. Thank you for saying that. Are you happy? The question surprised me. I'm getting there. Some days are good. Some are hard. But I can breathe, Jake. That's what matters. I'm sorry I made it so you couldn't. I know. We said goodbye like strangers, polite and distant, and when I hung up I realized I was smiling. Not because he'd apologized, that was too little, too late, but because I'd survived. Had walked through the fire and come out someone different. Someone who knew her own worth, who wouldn't accept crumbs, who could make marsala sauce in her own kitchen at 9 o'clock at night just because she felt like it. The divorce cost me money, time, the comfortable fiction that I was in a good marriage. It gave me back myself. 6 months later, I was seeing someone new. Carefully, cautiously, with all my walls up and my eyes open. Daniel was a high school teacher, kind and attentive in ways that still surprised me. On our third date, I told him about Jake. About the hospital, the divorce, the cardiac stress that had nearly broken me. That must have been terrifying, he said. Being that sick and alone. It was. But it also clarified things. Showed me what I'd been accepting as normal. I'm glad you got out. Me too. We were walking through the park near my apartment, early evening with the sun setting golden through the trees. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Megan, checking in like she did most days, but I ignored it. Stayed present in the moment, in the conversation, in the gentle pressure of Daniel's hand in mine. Later, I'd check the message. Later, I'd deal with whatever small crisis or question or funny meme my sister wanted to share. But right now, I was just here. Breathing easily. Heart beating steady and strong. Alive in a way I hadn't been in years. Sometimes I still see Jake around town. Manchester, New Hampshire isn't that big, and we have friends in common, orbits that occasionally intersect. He's polite when we cross paths, distant but not hostile. I heard he's dating someone new, a paralegal from his lawyer's office. I hope he treats her better than he treated me. Hope his therapy stuck, that he learned something from our implosion. Mostly, though, I don't think about him at all. That's the real revenge, I suppose. Not the dramatic exit or the served papers or the courtroom division of assets. But the quiet rebuilding of a life where he's just a footnote. A chapter I've closed and moved past. My chest doesn't hurt anymore. The cardiologist confirmed 6 months after the divorce that my heart had healed, the stress-induced damage reversing itself once I removed myself from the situation causing it. Your body knows things before your mind does, she told me. Pays attention to danger your conscious self wants to ignore. Those chest pains were trying to tell you something. I listened. Finally, after years of dismissing my own instincts, my own needs, my own screaming internal voice saying something is wrong here, I listened. That's the story. Not the version where I'm the villain who abandoned her marriage over one bad night. Not the version where I'm the victim who suffered in silence until I couldn't take it anymore. Just the truth, messy and complicated and deeply human. I married someone who couldn't see me. I stayed longer than I should have. I left when my body forced me to acknowledge what my heart already knew. And now I'm here, writing this all down in the notes app of my phone at 11 o'clock at night because I can't sleep and need to process, need to make sense of how 5 years could collapse in 3 days, how a marriage could end with divorce papers served at an office and a phone call full of desperate confusion. You're really leaving me over one night? Yes, Jake. And no. I'm leaving because of all the nights before that one, all the small dismissals and casual neglects that accumulated until my heart started breaking under the weight of them. That final night was just the moment I stopped lying to myself about what I deserved. I deserved someone who would cancel boys' night if I couldn't breathe. Who would drive me to the hospital without making me feel guilty for asking? Who would sit with me in the ER and hold my hand and worry about me more than he worried about his friend's disappointment? Basic things. Baseline things. Things I'd convinced myself were too much to ask for. They weren't. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in my story, seeing your own relationship, your own partner, your own accumulation of small hurts you've been explaining away, I need you to know something. You're not asking for too much. You're not too sensitive. You're not overreacting. If your body is telling you something's wrong, if your chest hurts or your stomach knots or you can't sleep at night because something feels off, listen to it. Listen before it gets so bad that you're driving yourself to the ER alone, before your heart starts breaking in measurable, medical ways. I waited too long. Don't be me. Or maybe, do be me. Be the version of me who finally left. Who filed the papers and changed her number and started over in a tiny apartment with morning sunlight and a kitchen where she could cook in peace. Be the version who survived, who healed, who learned that being alone is infinitely better than being lonely in a marriage. The sun's coming up now. I can see it through my bedroom window, that soft pre-dawn light that makes everything look possible. I should try to sleep, but I'm glad I wrote this instead. Glad I got it all out, all the anger and grief and hard-won wisdom. Tomorrow I have brunch plans with Megan. Dinner plans with Daniel. A full, busy life that belongs entirely to me. Tonight, I have this record, this confession, this story that's mine to tell however I want. And if Jake ever reads this somehow, finds it in the vast internet wilderness and recognizes himself in the details, I hope he understands. I don't hate him. I'm not trying to ruin his reputation or make him the villain. I'm just telling the truth about what happened, about how a marriage ended not with screaming or violence but with a quiet dismissal and the phrase emergency in air quotes. That was the moment I knew. Not when I filed. Not when the papers were served. But standing in our kitchen, struggling to breathe, hearing him minimize my pain because it conflicted with his plans. That was the moment I left, even though it took me 3 more days to make it physical. And I've never looked back. Not really. Sometimes late at night I wonder what would have happened if he'd stayed that night. If he'd taken me to the hospital, sat with me, worried about me the way partners are supposed to worry. Would I have still left eventually? Or would that one moment of caring have been enough to convince me to stay? I don't know. I'll never know. But I suspect the problems ran deeper than one night could fix, that the pattern was too ingrained, that we'd already been slowly ending for years without realizing it. The cardiac stress was just the symptom. The marriage was the disease. I'm healthy now. Healed. Happy, mostly, or at least heading in that direction. I don't have panic attacks anymore, don't wake up in the middle of the night with phantom chest pains. My body trusts me again to keep it safe, to listen when it speaks, to not ignore warning signs until they become emergencies. That's worth everything I lost in the divorce. Worth the money, the disruption, the social awkwardness of running into mutual friends who don't know whose side to take. Worth all of it and more. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was staying gone. 2 months after the divorce finalized, Jake's best friend Marcus called me. We'd been close once, the 4 of us, me, Jake, Marcus, and his wife Amy. Game nights and backyard cookouts, the kind of coupled friendship that feels effortless until it isn't. I need to tell you something, Marcus said, his voice tight. And Amy's going to kill me for this, but you deserve to know. My stomach dropped. Know what? That night. The boys' night when you went to the hospital. We weren't at O'Malley's the whole time. I don't understand. We were there for maybe an hour. Then Jake got a text from someone and suddenly he's making excuses about needing to leave early. Said you weren't feeling well and he should check on you. But that was a lie, He didn't go home. Steve saw him at that wine bar downtown, you know, the one on 5th Street. He was with someone? The words landed like stones. With who? I don't know her name. Brunette, late 20s maybe. They looked pretty cozy. Steve didn't want to tell me because he thought it might be work-related, but after everything that happened, after you filed, I just thought you should know. The hospital thing, it wasn't just him being careless. He chose something else over you that night. Someone else. I sat down on my apartment floor, bone pressed to my ear, trying to process this information. All those months I'd spent thinking he was just thoughtless, just prioritizing his friends over my emergency. But it was worse. So much worse. Why are you telling me this now? Because he's been playing the victim. Telling everyone you left him out of nowhere, that he made one mistake and you couldn't forgive it. Making himself out to be this devoted husband who got blindsided. And I'm tired of watching it. You're not the bad guy here, You never were. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall. Part of me wanted to call Sandra, to reopen the case, to use this information to destroy him the way he deserved. But a larger part just felt tired. Vindicated, yes, but exhausted by it all. I never told anyone except Megan. Didn't post it online, didn't spread it through our friend group, didn't use it as ammunition. That information was for me alone, a final confirmation that leaving had been right. That my instincts had been trying to protect me from something my conscious mind hadn't fully grasped. He wasn't just neglectful. He was actively choosing to neglect me. There's a difference. The therapy I started after the divorce helped me understand that. Dr. Sarah Martinez, specializing in complex trauma and relationship patterns, had a corner office with plants everywhere and a white noise machine that made me feel safe enough to fall apart. "You keep saying you should have known," she observed during one session. "Should have seen the signs earlier. Should have left sooner. But Emily, you were surviving." Sometimes survival means not looking too closely at the things that might break you. So I was just. What? Willfully blind? You were coping. There's no shame in that. The shame belongs to the person who exploited your coping mechanisms to get away with hurting you. I cried a lot in that office. Not pretty crying, but the ugly kind that leaves you gasping and snotty and emptied out. Cried for the years I'd lost. For the version of myself who'd believed that love meant accepting crumbs. For the girl I'd been before Jake, confident and whole, who I was trying desperately to find again. She's still there, Dr. Martinez assured me. Just older. Wiser. You didn't lose her. You protected her by leaving. The healing wasn't linear. Some days I felt strong, invincible, grateful for the divorce. Other days I'd see a couple holding hands in the grocery store and feel a physical ache for what I thought I had. What I'd wanted it to be, even if it never really was. Daniel was patient with my mess. More patient than I deserved, probably. 3 months into dating, I had a full panic attack in his apartment. We'd been watching a movie, something innocuous, and the male lead dismissed his girlfriend's concerns about something, I don't even remember what, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. The room tilted. My chest seized up with that familiar, terrifying tightness. Daniel turned off the movie immediately. Knelt in front of me, his hands gentle on my knees. "Emily, look at me. You're safe. I'm right here. Can you breathe with me?" He counted breaths. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Stayed with me until the panic receded and I could think clearly again. Then he brought me water and a blanket and didn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be. Trauma doesn't just disappear because you want it to. It takes time. You shouldn't have to deal with this. We've only been dating for 3 months. Emily." He waited until I looked at him. "I'm choosing to be here. You're not a burden for having been hurt by someone who should have protected you. Okay?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. That was when I knew he was different. Not because he was perfect, he wasn't. He left dishes in the sink and forgot to text back sometimes and had his own baggage from a messy breakup years ago. But he stayed when things got hard. He didn't run from my damage or expect me to pretend it didn't exist. He saw me scared and stayed anyway. The recovery process taught me things about myself I'd never had to learn before. How to be alone without being lonely. How to cook dinner for one without feeling like a failure. How to sleep through the night without someone beside me and wake up grateful for the space rather than resentful of the emptiness. These sound like small things, maybe insignificant to someone who's never had to rebuild themselves from scratch, but they were monumental to me. Each one a victory. Each one proof that I could survive without Jake, without anyone. Dr. Martinez gave me homework between sessions. Journal prompts about self-worth and boundary setting. Exercises where I had to list 10 things I liked about myself without mentioning anything related to how I served others. That one was harder than it should have been. I'd spent so long defining myself through my usefulness to Jake that finding my own value felt like learning a foreign language. But I learned. Slowly, painfully, with backsliding and doubt and nights where I questioned everything. But I learned. I learned that I liked my laugh, the real one, not the polite one I used in social situations. I learned that I was good at my job, genuinely skilled, not just competent because I worked harder than everyone else. I learned that I had opinions about things beyond what would make dinner easier or which movie would keep the peace. Strong opinions. Preferences. Desires that existed independent of anyone else's comfort. These discoveries felt revolutionary. Like finding pieces of myself I'd buried so deep I'd forgotten they existed. The first anniversary of the divorce passed quietly. I was at work when my phone reminded me, 1 year since final decree. I'd set the reminder months ago, thinking I'd want to celebrate, but instead I just felt contemplative. Reflective. A year ago I'd been terrified. Staying in Megan's guest room, jumping at every car door that slammed outside, wondering if I'd made a catastrophic mistake. Now I had my own apartment, a job I'd gotten promoted at because I could finally focus on my work, a relationship that felt safe and real, and a therapist who'd helped me understand that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means integrating the pain into who you are without letting it control you. I texted Megan, 1 year. She replied immediately, proud of you. Dinner tonight? Can't. Date with Daniel. Tomorrow? It's a date. Love you. That evening, Daniel took me to the same park where we'd had our third date. The one where I told him about Jake, about the hospital, about all of it. We sat on a bench watching the sunset, his arm around my shoulders. Can I ask you something? He said. Always. Do you ever regret it? Leaving, I mean. When it got really hard during the divorce, or when you see him around town, do you wish you'd stayed and tried to work it out? I thought about it. Really thought, not just giving the expected answer. No, I said finally. Not even on the hardest days. Because staying would have killed me. Maybe not literally, though the cardiac stress was heading that direction. But it would have killed the part of me that knew I deserved better. And once you kill that part, I don't think it comes back. I'm glad it didn't die. Me too. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching joggers pass and dogs chase tennis balls and life unfold in its ordinary, beautiful way. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. Probably work, or Megan confirming tomorrow's plans, or any number of things that could wait. Being present had become a practice for me. A conscious choice to stay in moments instead of racing ahead to the next crisis or obligation. Dr. Martinez called it mindfulness. I called it surviving. Later, when I checked my phone, there was a message from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Hi, Emily. This is Amy, Marcus's wife. I don't know if you heard, but Jake got engaged last weekend. To the woman he was seeing. I wanted you to hear it from someone who cares about you, not through the rumor mill. I hope you're doing well. You deserve every happiness. I stared at the message for a long time. Tried to find some feeling about it, anger, jealousy, vindication, anything. But there was nothing. Just a vague hope that she knew what she was getting into. That he changed like he claimed he had. That he wouldn't make her drive herself to the emergency room while having a medical crisis. I showed the message to Daniel. How do you feel? He asked carefully. Honestly? Nothing. Is that weird? No. I think it means you've healed. Maybe he was right. Or maybe indifference was its own kind of healing. Either way, I deleted the message and didn't think about it again for weeks. What I did think about was how close I'd come to accepting that life is permanent. How easily I could have convinced myself that the chest pains were normal, that his dismissiveness was just his personality, that marriage meant lowering your expectations until disappointment felt like baseline. I thought about the women who don't leave. Not because they're weak or stupid or complicit in their own suffering, but because leaving is terrifying. Because society tells us to compromise, to understand, to be patient. Because admitting that you chose wrong feels like failure. Because starting over alone seems impossible until you do it and realize you've been alone all along, just with someone else in the house. Sometimes I see those women in the grocery store or at coffee shops. You can spot them if you know what to look for, the careful way they check their phones, the slight flinch when theirs rings, the exhaustion that sits behind their eyes even when they're smiling. I want to shake them and tell them to run. But I also remember that I couldn't hear it either, back when I was drowning. Sometimes you have to nearly die before you're willing to swim. The second year after the divorce was easier. The panic attacks became rare instead of regular. I stopped checking over my shoulder in parking lots, stopped expecting Jake to appear around every corner demanding explanations. My body slowly learned to trust that the danger had passed. I started cooking again without crying. Tried new recipes, experimental things that Jake would have hated, spicy Korean stews, sour Vietnamese soups, anything with flavor and life and complexity. My kitchen became a place of joy again instead of performance. Megan noticed the change. You seem lighter, she said one day over lunch. Like yourself again. The you from before. Better than before, I corrected. Because now I know what I won't accept. She raised her glass. To knowing your worth. To knowing my worth, I echoed. And I meant it. Every word. Every hard-won piece of self-knowledge that had cost me a marriage but given me back my life. So that's my story. My confession. My truth. I drove myself to the ER while having a cardiac crisis, and 3 days later I filed for divorce. Not because I'm vindictive or cold or cruel. But because I finally loved myself more than I feared being alone. The revenge wasn't the divorce papers or the court proceedings or even the quiet satisfaction of building a better life. The revenge was survival. Was healing. Was refusing to let his neglect define my worth or limit my future. Was standing in my own kitchen making dinner for one and feeling grateful instead of lonely. Was learning that being alone and being lonely are entirely different things, and that sometimes the loneliest place you can be is in a marriage where you're invisible. Was understanding, finally, that the right person won't make you drive yourself to the hospital. Won't put air quotes around your emergency. Won't choose anyone or anything over making sure you're okay. That's not too much to ask. That's baseline. Foundation. The absolute minimum requirement for love. And settling for less than that will break your heart. Maybe literally, if you ignore the warning signs long enough. I didn't ignore them. Not in the end. I listened to my body when it screamed at me to run, and I ran. Messy and scared and uncertain, but I ran. And that, it turns out, was the only decision that ever really mattered.
Story 4. A moment, my stepdaughter interrupted Thanksgiving. For the man who thinks buying us things makes him family. Spoiler, it doesn't. After raising her since she was 3, I placed a letter on the table and left. Her grandmother opened it, read it, and went ash white. Jason. Don't do it. I left a letter on the Thanksgiving table that made my ex-mother-in-law turn white as fresh snow, and I walked out before anyone could finish reading it. That's the short version. The version that sounds clean. The version where I'm either the hero or the monster, depending on who's telling it. But nothing about what happened that November was clean. Nothing about the 15 years before it was simple. And nothing about what I'm about to tell you will make you feel good about taking sides. I'm Jason. 42 now, though I was 41 when this happened. I married Rachel when I was 24 and she was 26. She had a 3-year-old daughter named Emma from a previous relationship. The father wasn't in the picture. Not by choice, not by abandonment, just not there. Rachel didn't talk about him much. I didn't push. I met Emma on our 3rd date. Rachel brought her to a park. Emma had these huge brown eyes and pigtails that were already coming loose. She looked at me like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve, then asked if I knew how to push a swing properly because her mom always made her go too high. I spent 40 minutes pushing that swing at exactly the right height. When we left, Emma held my hand. 3 months later, I moved in. 6 months after that, Rachel and I got married in her mother's backyard. Emma was the flower girl. She took it seriously, counting her steps, dropping petals with mathematical precision. She was 4 by then. She called me Jason, not Dad. I didn't mind. I figured she'd get there when she was ready. She never did get there. But I didn't need the word. I was there for the first day of kindergarten, camera in hand, watching her march into that classroom like she owned it. I was there for every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every science fair project. I taught her to ride a bike. I stayed up with her when she had nightmares. I learned to braid hair by watching tutorials at 2 in the morning because Rachel had night shifts and Emma wanted French braids for picture day. Rachel and I divorced when Emma was 9. It wasn't explosive. No infidelity, no screaming matches. We just stopped working. Rachel wanted different things. I wanted different things. We tried counseling. It didn't take. We agreed to separate, agreed to co-parent, agreed to be adults about the whole thing. The divorce decree gave Rachel primary custody. I got Emma every other weekend and Wednesday dinners. I paid child support. More than the court ordered, actually, because I wanted to make sure Emma had everything she needed. Dance classes, art supplies, the expensive sneakers all the kids were wearing. I never missed a payment. Not once in 12 years. I stayed involved. Every recital, every soccer game, every birthday party. When Emma got her driver's license, I was the one who took her to the DMV. When she struggled with calculus, I hired a tutor. When she wanted to visit colleges, I drove her to every campus within a 6-hour radius. Rachel remarried when Emma was 12. A guy named Derek who worked in finance. He was fine. Polite. Wealthy. He bought Emma expensive gifts for every occasion. A laptop for her 13th birthday. A car for her 16th. He paid for her senior trip to Europe. I couldn't compete with that. I made decent money as an electrical engineer, but I wasn't Derek-level wealthy. I gave Emma what I could. Thoughtful gifts, my time, my attention. I thought that mattered. Maybe it did, for a while. Emma went to college 2 hours away. I helped her move into her dorm. Rachel and Derek were there too. We all carried boxes, assembled furniture, pretended everything was normal. When it was time to say goodbye, Emma hugged her mom first, then Derek, then me. Same length of time for each hug. Perfectly measured. She was home for Thanksgiving her freshman year. Then her sophomore year. Each visit felt a little colder. A little more distant. She'd scroll through her phone during conversations. She'd make plans with friends and cancel on me at the last minute. When I asked how school was going, she'd give me one-word answers. Rachel said it was normal. Emma was growing up, becoming independent, figuring out who she was. I wanted to believe that. Junior year, she stopped coming to Wednesday dinners. I'd text her to confirm, and she'd reply with something vague. Super busy with midterms. Group project due tomorrow. Feeling kind of sick. I'd offer to bring her food, to help with studying, to just sit with her if she wasn't feeling well. She'd say it was fine, she'd see me soon. Soon never came. I brought it up with Rachel. She said Emma was stressed, that college was hard, that I shouldn't take it personally. I tried not to. But it felt personal when Emma would post pictures on social media hanging out with friends on the same nights she'd canceled on me. It felt personal when she'd have time to grab dinner with Derek but not with me. I kept paying child support even though Emma was legally an adult. I kept offering to help with expenses. Books, groceries, gas money. Emma would accept the money with a quick, thanks over text, no follow-up conversation. Senior year came. Emma got an internship at Derek's company. She posted pictures from company events, Derek's arm around her shoulder, both of them smiling. The captions were always warm. Grateful for this opportunity. Learning so much from the best. She never posted pictures of us. I told myself I was being paranoid. Jealous, even. Derek had money and connections. Of course Emma was excited about the internship. Of course she was grateful. It didn't mean anything about how she felt about me. But the distance kept growing. Then came Thanksgiving of her senior year. Last November. Rachel was hosting at the house she shared with Derek. Big place, new construction, open floor plan. Everything gleamed. I was invited, like always. Rachel and I had managed to maintain a civil relationship for Emma's sake. We could sit at the same table, make small talk, pretend we were a functional blended family. I showed up with a bottle of wine and a pumpkin pie. Rachel's mother, Patricia, was already there. She'd always been kind to me, even after the divorce. She hugged me at the door, asked how I was doing, commented that I looked tired. I probably was. Work had been demanding. Life had been demanding. Emma arrived an hour late. She'd been at Derek's parents' house first, she explained. They did an early Thanksgiving brunch. She was still full. Might not eat much. She barely looked at me when she said hello. We sat down to eat. Rachel at one head of the table, Derek at the other. Patricia on one side, Emma next to her. Me across from Emma. The food was catered. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green beans, cranberry sauce. All of it looked perfect. Too perfect. Conversation was stilted. Patricia asked Emma about graduation plans. Emma talked about the job offer from Derek's company, how excited she was to start in January, how grateful she was for everything Derek had done to make it happen. Derek smiled, humble, waving it off. Rachel beamed. I asked Emma about her thesis. She gave me a 3-sentence answer and turned back to Derek. We made it through the meal. Barely. Then came dessert. Patricia brought out the pies. Rachel poured coffee. Derek opened a bottle of port. That's when Emma stood up. She picked up her wine glass. Half full. Red wine, the expensive kind Derek always bought. She cleared her throat. I want to make a toast, she said. Everyone looked at her. Smiled. Patricia pulled out her phone to record. Rachel straightened in her chair, proud. Emma looked at me. Really looked at me, for the first time all night. Her eyes were hard. Cold. To the man who thinks buying us things makes him family, she said. Her voice was steady. Clear. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. The room went silent. Emma, Rachel started. No, let me finish. Emma kept her eyes on me. You know what makes family? Being there. Actually being there, not just showing up when it's convenient. Not just throwing money at problems and thinking that fixes everything. My chest felt tight. Emma, you don't what? Understand? She laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. You've been absent my entire life, Jason. Physically there, sure. But emotionally? You were never really my dad. You were just there. A placeholder. And I'm done pretending that what you did was enough. Patricia lowered her phone. Rachel's face had gone pale. Derek looked uncomfortable, like he wanted to leave but couldn't figure out how. I should have said something. Defended myself. Asked what she meant. But I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. 15 years of trying, of showing up, of loving this kid who wasn't mine by blood but who I'd chosen every single day. And this is what she thought of me. Emma sat down. Took a sip of her wine like she just commented on the weather. Rachel tried to salvage it. Emma, I think you've had too much wine. Maybe we should. I haven't had too much wine, Mom. I've had just enough to finally say what I've been thinking for years. I stood up. My chair scraped against the hardwood floor, loud in the awful silence. I'm going to go, I said. My voice sounded far away. Jason, please, Rachel started. I walked to the door. Put on my coat. Patricia followed me, her hand on my arm. She didn't mean it, Patricia whispered. She's young. She's confused. She doesn't understand. She meant it, I said. I walked back to the table. Everyone was watching. Emma looked defensive now, arms crossed, chin up. I pulled an envelope out of my coat pocket. Plain white, letter-sized. I'd carried it with me for 3 weeks, ever since I'd written it. Ever since I'd made my decision. I placed it on the table. Right in the center, next to the pumpkin pie. Read this after I leave, I said. Or don't. Your choice. I left. Drove home. Sat in my apartment. Waited. The phone call came 45 minutes later. Rachel. She was crying. What did you do? She asked. What did you write in that letter? I told her to read it out loud. Let Emma hear it. Let Derek hear it. Let everyone hear it. Jason, please. I hung up. 3 minutes later, Patricia called. Her voice shook. Jason, you can't do this. You can't. Please. I'm begging you. Think about what this will do to Emma. Think about Rachel. Think about. I've been thinking about them for 15 years, I said. I'm done. If you go through with this, you'll destroy her. You'll destroy all of them. Is that what you want? Is that really what you want? Read the letter, Patricia, I said. Then call me back. I hung up again. My phone exploded. Texts from Rachel. From Patricia. From numbers I didn't recognize, probably Derek or Emma. I turned it off. I want to tell you what was in that letter. I will tell you. But first, you need to understand how I got there. How 15 years of trying turned into 15 years of evidence. How love turned into something colder, sharper, more permanent. Let me back up. When Rachel and I divorced, we agreed to split everything fairly. The house, the savings, the debt. It was mostly amicable. But there was one thing I insisted on, Emma's college fund. I'd been contributing to it since she was 4. Every month, without fail. I wanted it in writing that the fund was protected, that it could only be used for Emma's education, and that both Rachel and I had to approve any withdrawals. Rachel agreed. It was in the divorce decree. The fund grew. By the time Emma was ready for college, there was almost $200,000 in it. Enough for 4 years at a good school, room and board, books, everything. Emma went to a state school. Tuition was reasonable. Room and board was manageable. She had some scholarships. We didn't need to touch most of the fund. 6 months into her freshman year, Rachel called me. She needed to make a withdrawal from the fund. $10,000. Emma needed a new laptop, textbooks, some unexpected expenses. I said yes. I trusted Rachel. 3 months later, another withdrawal. $15,000. Emma wanted to study abroad sophomore year. The program was expensive. I said yes again. Junior year, another withdrawal. $20,000. Emma's car broke down. She needed a new one. I started asking questions. The numbers didn't add up. Emma had posted pictures of the broken car on social media. It looked fine. And the study abroad program? She'd posted pictures from that too, but it was only a 2-week trip, not a semester. Rachel got defensive. Told me I was being controlling, that Emma was an adult, that she could make her own choices. I backed off. I didn't want to fight. But I started paying attention. I hired a forensic accountant. Quiet, discreet. I gave him access to the college fund statements. Told him to trace every withdrawal, every expense. It took him 3 months. What he found made me sick. Rachel had been withdrawing money from the fund for years. Not for Emma. For herself. For Derek. For their house, their vacations, their lifestyle. She'd been careful, spacing out the withdrawals, making up plausible excuses. But it was all lies. $75,000. Gone. Not on Emma's education. Not on her future. On Rachel's present. I confronted Rachel. Showed her the evidence. She tried to deny it, then justify it, then begged me not to tell Emma. She said she'd pay it back, that it was a mistake, that she'd been struggling financially and panicked. I didn't believe her. But I didn't tell Emma. Not yet. I wanted to see how far it would go. Senior year, Rachel tried to make another withdrawal. $30,000. She said it was for Emma's senior trip and graduation expenses. I said no. Rachel threatened to take me to court. Said I was withholding Emma's money, that I was trying to control her. I told her to go ahead. I had documentation. I had proof. And I had a lawyer who was very interested in the pattern of fraud I'd uncovered. Rachel backed off. But Emma didn't know any of this. To her, I was the one saying no. The one refusing to help. The one making things difficult. Rachel must have told her some version of the story. Painted me as stingy, controlling, jealous of Derek's success. Because Emma's coldness made sense after that. The cancelled dinners, the one-word texts, the distance. She thought I was the bad guy. And I let her think it. Because I was gathering evidence. Because I wanted to be sure. Because once I told her the truth, there was no going back. That Thanksgiving toast was the breaking point. Not because it hurt, though it did, more than I want to admit, but because it crystallized something I'd been avoiding for months. Emma didn't see me as her father. She probably never had. And Rachel had spent years undermining me, taking my money, poisoning my relationship with the girl I'd raised. I could have told Emma the truth right there at the table. Could have pulled out my phone, shown her the bank statements, the accountant's report, the proof of her mother's theft. But that would have been too easy. Too immediate. Too temporary. I wanted something permanent. So I wrote the letter. I spent 3 weeks on it. Draft after draft, making sure every word was precise, every fact was documented, every conclusion was inescapable. The letter started with a simple statement: I am formally terminating all financial support and relinquishing all parental rights to Emma effective immediately. Then it laid out everything. Every withdrawal. Every lie. Every dollar stolen from Emma's future. I included copies of bank statements, the accountant's report, screenshots of text messages where Rachel had lied about where the money was going. But that wasn't the devastating part. The devastating part was what came next. I explained that under the terms of our divorce decree, any fraud related to the college fund gave me the right to pursue legal action. Not just against Rachel, but against anyone who benefited from the stolen funds. Which meant Derek. Which meant, by extension, Emma's job offer. Because Derek's company had been funded, in part, by money stolen from Emma's education. I didn't just have proof of Rachel's theft. I had proof that Derek knew about it. Text messages between Rachel and Derek discussing the withdrawals. Emails about how they'd use the money to invest in Derek's business. Documentation showing that the timeline of Derek's company growth coincided perfectly with the withdrawals from Emma's fund. Derek had built his success, the success he'd used to impress Emma and offer her a job, on money stolen from her. And I had every intention of reporting it. The letter explained this in detail. The legal ramifications. The criminal charges Rachel would face. The civil suit I could bring against Derek. The way it would destroy his business, his reputation, his marriage. Emma's job offer would evaporate. Derek's company would collapse. Rachel would face fraud charges. But here was the thing, I didn't want to do it. The letter made that clear. I had no desire to destroy anyone. I just wanted Emma to know the truth. I wanted her to understand who had really been there for her, who had really sacrificed, who had really been family. And I wanted to give her a choice. If Emma contacted me within 30 days, if she acknowledged what Rachel had done, if she made any effort to repair our relationship, I would drop everything. I wouldn't press charges. I wouldn't file suit. I would walk away quietly and let everyone move on with their lives. But if she didn't contact me, if she chose Derek and Rachel and the lie they built, then I would move forward with everything. Every legal option. Every consequence. I gave Emma 30 days to choose. The letter ended with this: you told me I was never really your father. You're right. A father is someone you choose, and you've made your choice. Now I'm making mine. I choose truth. I choose consequences. And I choose to walk away from a relationship built on theft and lies. The next move is yours. I put the letter on the table and left. That was a year ago. For the first week, my phone was constant. Calls, texts, voicemails. Rachel begging. Patricia pleading. Derek's lawyer sending threatening letters that had no legal weight because everything I'd done was above board. Emma didn't call. Week 2, Rachel showed up at my apartment. Pounded on the door. Screamed through it that I was destroying their lives, that I was heartless, that I was doing this out of spite. I didn't open the door. Week 3, Derek contacted me directly. Offered me money. A lot of money. Enough to make the whole thing go away. I said no. Week 4, Patricia came to my office. She looked like she'd aged 10 years. She asked me if this was really what I wanted. If I could live with myself if I went through with it. I asked her if Rachel could live with herself knowing she'd stolen from her own daughter. Patricia didn't have an answer. Day 29. Still no word from Emma. I filed the complaints that evening. Fraud charges against Rachel. A civil suit against Derek. Everything I'd threatened in the letter. The next morning, Emma called. I almost didn't answer. Almost let it go to voicemail. Almost ended it there. But I answered. Hello, Emma, I said. Silence. Then, is it true? Every word. More silence. I could hear her breathing. Shaky. Uneven. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. Would you have believed me? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I'm withdrawing the complaints, I said. What? You called. That was the deal. You called within 30 days. So I'm withdrawing everything. Rachel won't face charges. Derek's business is safe. Your job is safe. But you said, I said if you didn't contact me, I'd go through with it. You contacted me. So I'm not. I don't understand. You don't have to. This isn't about understanding. It's about choice. You made one. So did I. Jason, you were right, Emma. I wasn't your father. I was something else. I don't know what. Guardian, maybe. Caretaker. Someone who loved you and tried to do right by you and failed somewhere along the way. But I'm done trying to figure out where I fit in your life. I'm done carrying the weight of a relationship you never wanted. That's not fair. No, I said. It's not. None of this is fair. But it's true. I didn't know, she said. Her voice broke. I didn't know what she did. I didn't know any of it. I thought, you thought I was the problem. I know. She told me you were being difficult. That you didn't want to help. That you were jealous of Derek. I know. I believed her. I know. Silence again. Longer this time. What do I do now? Emma asked. That's up to you. You're an adult. You make your own choices. You always have. But the job, Derek's company, is built on money stolen from you. That's something you'll have to live with. Whether you work there, whether you stay connected to him, whether you forgive your mother. Those are your decisions. Not mine. Are you going to forgive her? No. Are you going to forgive me? I didn't answer right away. I wanted to. Some part of me wanted to tell her yes, that we could rebuild, that 15 years of trying had to count for something. But I thought about the Thanksgiving toast. About the coldness in her eyes. About the years of canceled dinners and one-word texts and choosing Derek over me every single time. I don't know, I said finally. Maybe someday. But not today. Jason, take care of yourself, Emma. I hung up. I withdrew the complaints that afternoon. Everything official, everything documented. Rachel didn't face charges. Derek's business continued. Emma graduated and started her job. I heard through Patricia that Rachel and Derek separated 6 months later. The marriage couldn't survive the truth. Emma moved out on her own, cut contact with Derek, started seeing a therapist. Patricia updates me sometimes. Small things. Emma got a new apartment. Emma changed jobs. Emma is doing okay. I never ask for more details. Emma and I don't talk. She's tried to reach out a few times. Texts, mostly. Tentative. Hey, how are you? Thinking of you. Can we talk? I don't respond. Maybe that makes me cold. Maybe it makes me unforgiving. Maybe it makes me the bad guy in this story. But here's what I learned. You can love someone with everything you have and still not be enough. You can sacrifice and provide and show up and try, and they can still look at you like you're nothing. And when that happens, you have two choices. You can keep trying, keep hoping they'll see you differently. Or you can walk away. I walked away. I withdrew the legal complaints because Emma called. Because that was the deal. Because I keep my word. But I didn't forgive. I didn't forget. I didn't rebuild. Some breaks are permanent. People want a neat ending. They want reconciliation or revenge. They want Emma to realize what she lost, to come crawling back, to beg for forgiveness. They want me to be vindicated. Or they want me to be the villain. The stepfather who couldn't accept that he wasn't really family, who used money and power to manipulate and hurt, who burned everything down out of spite. But it's neither. It's both. It's messier than that. I raised Emma for 15 years. I loved her. I tried. And it wasn't enough. Rachel stole from her own daughter. Emma believed lies about me. Derek built his success on fraud. And I left a letter that gave Emma a choice and walked away from a relationship that had been bleeding out for years. There's no villain in this story. Or maybe there's only villains. Or maybe there's just people making choices and living with the consequences. I filed the paperwork to formally terminate my parental rights 3 months after Emma's call. It was symbolic more than anything. She was an adult, legally independent. But I wanted it official. Wanted a clean end. I don't pay child support anymore. Obviously. Emma's an adult with a job. But I also closed the college fund. What was left, about $100,000, I moved into a trust. Emma can access it when she's 30. By then, maybe she'll have perspective. Maybe she'll understand. Maybe she won't. I don't think about her every day anymore. Some days I don't think about her at all. Other days, I'll see a girl with pigtails or drive past the park where I pushed that swing, and it hits me all over again. What I lost. What she lost. What we could have been if things had been different. But things weren't different. They were exactly what they were. The first few months after the letter were the hardest. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, heart pounding, replaying the Thanksgiving dinner in my head. Emma's voice, cold and clear. The way Rachel's face crumpled when she read the letter. Patricia's desperate phone call. I'd wonder if I'd made a mistake. If I'd overreacted. If there was some other way I could have handled it that wouldn't have burned everything to the ground. Then I'd remember the bank statements. The lies. The $75,000 stolen from Emma's future. The way Rachel had spent years poisoning Emma against me while taking my money. And I'd remember that I didn't burn anything to the ground. Rachel did that. I just forced everyone to look at the ashes. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into projects, stayed late, volunteered for the assignments no one else wanted. My boss noticed. Promoted me 6 months after Thanksgiving. More responsibility, more money, more reasons to stay at the office instead of going home to an empty apartment. My coworkers asked if I wanted to join them for happy hour. I said yes sometimes. Sat at the bar, nursed a beer, listened to them complain about their spouses and their kids. Normal problems. Regular frustrations. A daughter who wouldn't clean her room. A son who was failing algebra. A teenager who kept sneaking out. They didn't know how lucky they were. To have problems that simple. To have relationships that intact. I dated, briefly. A woman named Sarah I met through a friend. She was nice. Attractive. Easy to talk to. We went out 3 times. Dinner, a movie, coffee. She asked about my family on the 3rd date. I told her I didn't have kids. It wasn't technically a lie. Not anymore. She sensed something was wrong. Didn't push. We went out 2 more times after that, but the energy had shifted. She stopped texting. I didn't reach out. We both let it fade. I wasn't ready. Maybe I'd never be ready. Rachel kept trying to contact me. The text started apologetic. Jason, please, we need to talk. I know I messed up. Can we work this out? Then they got desperate. Emma is falling apart. You're destroying our family. How can you be so cruel? Then angry. You're punishing Emma for my mistakes. You never really loved her. This is who you really are. I blocked her number after that one. Derek tried once. Showed up at my office. Security called me, said someone was asking for me in the lobby. I went down, saw him standing there in an expensive suit, looking out of place and uncomfortable. We need to talk, he said. No, we don't. You're ruining lives, Jason. My business, Rachel's reputation, Emma's future. I'm not ruining anything. I'm just not covering for you anymore. I didn't know, he said. About the college fund. I didn't know Rachel was taking money from it. Yes, you did. His face changed. Guilt, briefly, before he covered it with indignation. You can't prove that. I have emails. Text messages. Bank records showing transfers from Rachel's account to your business account that coincide with withdrawals from the college fund. I have documentation that would hold up in court. The only reason I'm not using it is because Emma called me on day 30. She called because I made her. Because I told her what you'd written in that letter, what you'd threatened to do. She didn't want to. She was angry at you. She still is. That stung more than it should have. But I kept my face neutral. Then she can stay angry. But she made the call. That was the deal. You're not going to win this, Jason. Emma doesn't want you in her life. Rachel doesn't want you in her life. You're the one who's alone here. Then I'm alone. I can live with that. He left. I went back to my office, closed the door, and sat at my desk for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. He was right. I was alone. But I'd been alone for years. I just hadn't realized it until Emma made that toast. Patricia became my only connection to that old life. She'd call every few weeks, always starting with "I hope you don't mind me reaching out." I never minded. Patricia hadn't done anything wrong. She was just a woman caught between her daughter's choices and her granddaughter's pain. She told me things I didn't ask to know. Emma dropped out of Derek's company 3 weeks after I withdrew the complaints. Couldn't handle working there, Patricia said. Too much guilt, too much confusion. Emma found a new job. Something in marketing for a startup. Less money, fewer connections, but cleaner. Untainted. Rachel and Derek tried counseling. It didn't work. The foundation of their marriage had been built on stolen money and lies, and once that came out, there was nothing left to save. They separated. Rachel moved into an apartment closer to Patricia. Derek kept the house. The divorce was finalized 8 months after that Thanksgiving. Patricia said Rachel fell apart. Lost weight, stopped taking care of herself, called Patricia crying at odd hours. Emma tried to support her, but there was too much anger there. Too much betrayal. She asks about you, Patricia said during one call. Rachel? Both of them. I didn't respond. Emma wants to talk to you. She's written you letters. She hasn't sent them, but she's written them. I don't want to read them. Why not? Because it won't change anything. She called on day 30 because Derek made her. Because she was scared of the consequences. Not because she believed me. Not because she was sorry. She called to save Derek's business and her job. She was confused, Jason. She didn't know what to believe. Then she should have believed me. After 15 years, she should have given me the benefit of the doubt. But she didn't. She believed her mother. She believed Derek. She believed everyone except the person who actually showed up for her. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then, you're not wrong. But you're not entirely right either. What does that mean? It means Emma was young. It means Rachel lied to her for years. It means Derek manipulated both of them. It means Emma made mistakes, but she was 18, 19, 20 years old. Still learning. Still figuring things out. And I'm supposed to just forgive that? Accept that she spent years treating me like I didn't matter because she was young? No. You're supposed to recognize that you're 42 and she's 23. You're supposed to recognize that you're the adult here, even if you don't feel like one. I've been the adult for 15 years, Patricia. I'm tired of being the adult. She sighed. I know. I know you are. But walking away doesn't make you less tired, Jason. It just makes you alone. We talked for a few more minutes. Polite conversation, careful topics. She asked about work. I asked about her garden. We said goodbye. I sat with her words for a long time after we hung up. Walking away doesn't make you less tired. It just makes you alone. She was right. But she was also wrong. I wasn't just tired. I was done. Done trying to be enough for someone who would never see me as enough. Done sacrificing and showing up and hoping that eventually it would matter. The letter wasn't revenge. It was a release. I needed Emma to know the truth. I needed Rachel to face consequences. I needed to stop being the person who absorbed all the hurt and kept going. And I needed permission to walk away. The letter gave me that. The 30-day deadline, Emma's reluctant call, the withdrawal of the complaints. It gave me a clean ending. An exit that didn't make me the villain but didn't require me to keep playing a role I couldn't sustain. People don't understand that. They think I should have fought harder. Forgiven faster. Been bigger. But they weren't there. They didn't spend 15 years loving someone who couldn't love them back the same way. They didn't sit at a Thanksgiving table and hear themselves called a placeholder. They didn't watch their money get stolen while being painted as the bad guy. I did what I had to do. Not for revenge. Not for satisfaction. But for survival. And if that makes me cold or unforgiving or damaged, then I'll own that. Because I'm still here. Still functioning. Still okay most days. That's more than I thought I'd have after that Thanksgiving. Rachel texted me one more time, about 4 months after I blocked her. She must have gotten a new number. The text said, Emma tried to hurt herself last week. She's okay now. She's getting help. I thought you should know. I stared at that text for an hour. Read it over and over until the words lost meaning. Emma tried to hurt herself. Part of me wanted to call. To show up at the hospital or her apartment or wherever she was. To make sure she was really okay. To be there, like I'd always been there. But I didn't. Because I couldn't trust that it was true. Couldn't trust that Rachel wasn't manipulating me. Couldn't trust that Emma actually wanted me there. And because even if it was true, even if Emma was struggling, me showing up wouldn't fix it. It would just restart a cycle that needed to stay broken. I called Patricia instead. Is Emma okay? I asked. Patricia hesitated. You heard. Rachel texted me. New number. Is it true? Yes. She had a bad night. Called Rachel, said some things that scared her. Rachel took her to the emergency room. They kept her overnight for observation. She's with a therapist now. She's going to be okay. Because of me? No. Because of a lot of things. Rachel. Derek. The lies. The truth. The last few years. You're part of it, but you're not all of it. Should I reach out? Do you want to? I don't know. Then don't. Not yet. Emma needs to work through things on her own. You reaching out now, when she's vulnerable, when she's not stable. It wouldn't be helpful. Not for her. Not for you. Okay. Jason? Yeah? You did what you had to do. I don't agree with all of it. But I understand it. And I don't blame you. Thanks, Patricia. We hung up. I didn't reach out to Emma. Didn't respond to Rachel's text. Just let it sit there, unread and unanswered, while I tried to figure out how I felt. Guilty? Yes. A little. No matter how justified my actions were, I'd played a role in Emma's pain. I'd written a letter that forced truths she wasn't ready to handle. I'd drawn a line that left her on one side and me on the other. But I also felt something else. Something harder to name. Relief. Because Emma's crisis wasn't my responsibility. Not anymore. I'd spent 15 years being responsible for her happiness, her stability, her future. And it had never been enough. Now someone else could carry that weight. Rachel. A therapist. Emma herself. I was free. That realization felt awful and liberating at the same time. I saw Emma once, about 8 months after Thanksgiving. Completely by accident. I was at a coffee shop near my office, waiting for my order. She walked in with a guy. Tall, athletic looking, probably her age. They were laughing about something. She looked good. Healthy. Her hair was shorter. She'd cut it. She didn't see me at first. I could have left. Grabbed my coffee and walked out before she noticed. But I didn't. I just stood there, watching her order, watching her smile at something the guy said. Then she turned. Saw me. The smile dropped. We stared at each other for 3, maybe 4 seconds. Long enough for the barista to call my name. Long enough for the guy with her to notice something was wrong. Long enough for me to see that she looked scared. I grabbed my coffee. Walked past her without saying anything. Heard her say my name, soft and uncertain. Didn't stop. Made it to the sidewalk before she caught up. Jason, wait. I stopped. Turned around. She was standing there, hands shoved in her jacket pockets, looking smaller than I remembered. Hi, she said. Hi. Silence. Awkward and heavy. How are you? She asked. Fine. You? I'm okay. Better. Good. More silence. I've been wanting to talk to you, she said. I've written you letters. I didn't know if you'd want to hear from me. I wouldn't have read them. She flinched. Right. Yeah. I figured. The guy she'd been with appeared in the doorway. Looked at us, confused. Emma waved him off. He went back inside. Is that your boyfriend? I asked. Yeah. His name's Michael. He's good. Good for me. That's good. Why did I keep saying that word? Good. Like it meant anything. Like we were strangers making small talk about the weather. I'm sorry, Emma said suddenly. For Thanksgiving. For what I said. For all of it. I didn't understand. I didn't know what Mom had done. And when I found out, it broke something. I can't explain it. But I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was 23 now. An adult. But standing there, apologizing, she looked like the kid I'd raised. The one who'd asked me to push her swing at exactly the right height. I know, I said. Can we talk? Sometime? Get coffee or something? I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because I don't want to. Jason, you were right, Emma. That night at Thanksgiving. I wasn't your dad. I tried to be. For 15 years, I tried. But I wasn't. And I'm done trying. That's not fair. I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. You meant them. Maybe not the way you said them, but you meant them. And that's okay. You get to feel however you feel. But I get to walk away. So that's it? 15 years, and you're just done? Yes. She looked like I'd hit her. Eyes wide, hurt, disbelieving. I thought you loved me, she whispered. I did. I do. But love isn't enough. Not when it's only going one direction. Not when the other person doesn't see it, doesn't value it, doesn't reciprocate. I'm trying now. Doesn't that count for something? You're trying because your world fell apart. You're trying because you lost Derek's job and your mom's marriage imploded and you realized the foundation you'd been standing on was rotten. You're not trying because you want me in your life. You're trying because you're scared and guilty and looking for absolution. That's not true. Isn't it? She didn't answer. Take care of yourself, Emma, I said. I mean that. I hope you're happy. I hope therapy helps. I hope Michael is good to you. But I can't be the person who fixes this for you. I can't be anything for you anymore. I walked away. She didn't follow. When I got back to my office, I locked the door and sat at my desk for a long time, hands shaking, chest tight. It was the right thing to do. I knew it was the right thing to do. But it still hurt. Rachel texts me sometimes. Apologies. Explanations. Excuses. I don't respond to those either. Patricia still checks in. She's the only one I talk to. She feels caught in the middle, I think. Her daughter committed fraud. Her granddaughter was complicit, at least through ignorance. And the man who raised Emma for 15 years walked away. She doesn't take sides. She just updates me and asks if I'm okay. I tell her I am. Most days, I believe it. Here's what I want you to understand. I didn't write that letter to hurt Emma. I wrote it to give her truth. I wrote it because I was tired of being the placeholder, The ATM, the man who wasn't really family. I wrote it because I loved her enough to let her choose, even if she chose wrong. And she did choose. For 29 days, she chose Derek and Rachel in the comfortable lie. On day 30, when the consequences were real, when Derek's business and her job were at risk, she called. Not because she believed me. Not because she was sorry. Not because she wanted to rebuild our relationship. Because she was scared. And I honored the deal anyway. Because I keep my word. Because I'm not Rachel. Because I wanted Emma to have her future, even if I wasn't part of it. Maybe that makes me a good person. Maybe it makes me a sucker. Maybe it just makes me tired. I'm 42. I don't have kids. I don't have a relationship with the girl I raised. I have a job and an apartment and a life that's quieter than it used to be. Sometimes people ask if I regret it. Writing the letter. Walking away. Ending things. I don't know how to answer that. I regret that it came to that. I regret that Rachel lied and stole. I regret that Emma believed her. I regret that 15 years of trying wasn't enough to build trust. But I don't regret walking away. Because here's the truth, I would have kept trying forever. I would have kept showing up, kept paying, kept hoping that eventually Emma would see me. Really see me. The letter forced an ending. A clean break. A moment where Emma had to choose, and I had to accept her choice. She chose her mother and Derek. She chose the lie. I chose to leave. And we both have to live with that. There's no satisfaction in it. No sense of justice served or revenge completed. Just a quiet acceptance that some relationships end, even when you don't want them to. Even when you tried everything. Emma is 24 now. I'm 42. We live in the same city but we might as well be on different continents. Patricia tells me Emma asks about me sometimes. If I'm okay. If I'm happy. If I ever think about her. I don't know what Patricia tells her. Probably something kind. Patricia is good at that. The truth is harder. Yes, I think about her. More than I should. Less than I used to. Yes, I'm okay. Most days. Happy? That's complicated. I didn't write that letter for happiness. I wrote it for truth. For consequences. For the clean break I needed but couldn't create any other way. I wrote it so Emma would know. So Rachel would face what she'd done. So Derek would understand that theft has a price. And then I walked away. Not because I won. Not because they lost. But because some fights don't have winners. They just have survivors. I survived. So did Emma. We just survived apart. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that has to be enough. Because I'm not writing another letter. I'm not making another call. I'm not trying again. I raised her for 15 years. I loved her. I tried. And then I left a letter on a Thanksgiving table and walked away. That's the story. That's all of it. No neat resolution. No dramatic confrontation. No moment of realization where Emma finally understands and we rebuild what was broken. Just a letter. A choice. And two people learning to live with the consequences. Patricia called me last month. Said Emma got engaged. Some guy she met at her new job. He sounds nice, Patricia said. Stable. Kind. Patricia asked if I wanted Emma to send me an invitation to the wedding. I said no. Not out of spite. Not out of anger. Just. No. I won't be the ghost of that wedding. The man who raised her but isn't family. The placeholder in a tuxedo, awkward and out of place. Emma made her choice. I made mine. We're living them. And that's where this ends. No reconciliation. No revenge. No resolution. Just a man who loved a girl who wasn't his, tried for 15 years, and walked away when it wasn't enough. That's the truth. The whole truth. The only truth that matters. I left a letter on a Thanksgiving table, and it changed everything. And nothing. And that's okay. It has to be.